The September 9th, 10th meeting of the Durham Planning Board shall come to order. We'll start with a roll call. I'm going to start with you, Peter. Peter Hab.
Gary Whittington.
Robert Sullivan.
Heather Grant.
Sally Tobias.
Paul Rasmussen.
Michael Barron, Town Planner.
Peyton McManus.
Richard Kelly.
Darrell Ford.
Munish Nanda.
Julian Smith.
So we have two new members at the board tonight. I'd like to welcome Julian Smith, who is our new planning board alternate, and Darrell Ford, who is the new alternate from the town council. Thank you, gentlemen. All of our regular members are here, so I do not need to seat any alternates. Approval of the agenda, I am happy with it. Does anybody have anything they'd like to adjust? No. Approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Town planners report.
Not much to report. We have a few new minor items, projects coming in the next two meetings, lot line adjustments, a couple of those. And I'm assuming that Heather or Darrell can update you about the council meeting on the three-story item.
Are any questions for the town planner? All right, then reports from board members who serve on other committees, and we can start with town council.
Okay. So the town council met on Monday. We appointed a new council member to replace Eric Lund, who, as everyone knows, passed away recently. So Carden Welsh has now joined the town council. We had, some unanimous consent items. I think the most important was one that was removed and then discussed prior to approving, and that is that there'll be a public hearing on October 6th regarding the Mill Pond Dam removal project and the approval of the funds that are supposed to come to us as funding from NOAA. So that'll be on October 6th. Again, we voted to approve committee appointment for Julian Smith, who's here today. We had presentations from the library, public library, library director, which was very interesting. I won't go through the details, but if anybody's interested in what they've accomplished over the last several years based on their goals, it was quite informative. There was an update for the planning board with Paul and some discussion and points there. Then we got the most important item, of course, was that we had a discussion regarding the going from a 3-story height to the 4-story height by right in the Central Business District 1. And that was actually a closed public hearing, and there was supposed to be discussion just with the town council, but we had an awful lot at the public comments portion at the beginning of the meeting, where the main discussion was definitely that particular item. So in the end, it was voted to bring that back to the planning board with some adjustments that will be worked on by Michael first. I tried to press for the fact that it shouldn't just be kicked back here for us to guess again about what they would want to have as content, because we're the ones that initiated that as a priority item in the beginning. So with some adjustments, with Michael to have a look at that with us, then maybe back, and then back to the planning board for review. Oh, and then Sally gave the presentation. I'm looking at the...
You're in line, that's right.
I
got bumped up.
Yeah, so the agenda originally had her as last, which would have been a late night for her because it would have been about 11 o'clock at night.
It still was.
And she did a summary of the Housing Task Force and the accomplishments and the work that we've been doing for several years on that. So I think that winds up in October, and the Housing Task Force will then sunset. So
October 6th.
And that's everything.
We did our task.
Okay. Other committees?
The minutes from the TRG are now posted, if everybody didn't see those for Riverwoods. And I guess the two outstanding things is just the Underwood work to look at the water and the left turn lane for DOT. Those are just kind of still to be done things.
And
Are you going to do housing?
IMAC met, they're working on a expanded compost challenge for this fall, where they're going to try to include all of the Durham-based Durham resident employees here at Town Hall as well. And that should be getting started in a couple more weeks.
Are you going to do task force?
Oh, Housing Task Force? Well, Heather kind of did most of it. So the Housing Task Force has a last set of changes. They're primarily focused on table of uses, table of dimensions, a few other textual comments that go along with them. Before they present them to us, which will probably be in late October timeframe, they're going to have at their last, basically an information session for the public that will be on DCAT. So anyone who can't make it to the session, which is a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning session, would be able to review it on DCAT. But it's an explanation of what the changes are and the reasoning behind those changes that are going to be presented to us here at the Planning Board. And we'll be getting that full thing as well when they come to us. Anything more?
No, that's it.
No? Okay. Moving on, public comments. Is there anyone who'd like to make public comments to us that's not part of the public hearings tonight? Do we have anyone on Zoom?
No hands raised.
Thank you. All right, then, item 8, lot line adjustment, Baghdad Road. This is a lot line adjustment with 4,658 square feet being conveyed from 50 Baghdad Road, map 104, lot 67, owned by Wayne Shirley, to 48 Baghdad Road, map 104, lot 68, owned by Marcus Evergreen. Paul Diberstein, surveyor, Residence A District.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Paul Dauberstein, Stake and Stones Land Surveying, here on behalf of the owners and applicants, Marcus Evergreen and Wayne Shirley. Mr. Evergreen is here with me tonight if there's any questions that he can address that I can't. So I'll give you a quick overview of the application. So obviously the applicants own properties adjacent to each other on Baghdad Road. To orient with you, this is just past the high school when you cross over the bypass on Baghdad Road. So it's that neighborhood there. Mr. Evergreen just built a new home on the property. Some of you may remember, if you ever drove by there, it was a little bit derelict for many years. He purchased it a couple of years ago and just recently completed a home on there. The current boundary line between the two properties was established by agreement back in 2007 when the property, Mr. Evergame's property, was subdivided to include the adjacent property to the west was subdivided off back then, and that line was established as part of that survey then. And the proposal is essentially simply to convey a strip 20 feet wide, which is now currently its lawn, with the, I guess you would say, the southerly maybe quarter to a third of the strip being wooded adjacent to the creek there. So I know that Mr. Barrett had asked to address the waivers this evening, because we did request a couple of waivers. I can address them individually or kind of in total, as they are basically two waivers for the same thing, which is essentially not to survey the entirety of Mr. Shirley's property. Basically, just a little backstory on the reason for this request is, so I've been working with Mr. Everingham since he bought the property. I surveyed his property as part of doing his building permit, and there were some wetlands down in the southerly area to make sure he didn't need a conditional use permit or anything for that, for his work that he was doing. And then I also worked with him on establishing a sewer easement that had been intended to be conveyed during the subdivision that wasn't. We cleared all that up and recorded plans for that. So that's why I have his property completely surveyed. He came to me looking to just buy this strip from his neighbor. If he had come to me fresh and clean and said, I want to do this lot line adjustment, it probably would have said, well, we need to survey both properties in their entirety and, and then do the plan from there. In this case, I already have the lines established. I have enough of Mr. Shirley's property lines established to accurately depict where the property lines are, basically to confidently portray the area that's being conveyed, state that there's no encroachments that are going to occur as part of the adjustment. And for that reason, we just think that it would be a costly endeavor to survey the entire Shirley property. It's not necessary for the board's review because of the nature of the lot line adjustment. We feel like you have enough information to assess the adjustment, on its face. And so that's why we're requesting it. It's a matter of cost and time, because frankly, right now, if you called me, I'd be telling you I couldn't get to your project till January or February. So, it's just trying to get this before the board, try to gain approval so the transfer can take place and these parties can move on. There's currently no issue or encroachments or anything that are driving this lot line adjustment. It's kind of a lawn area. It's a little bit of a no man's land. Mr. Everingham wants the extra little bit of space next to his new house, and Mr. Shirley's willing to sell it, so that's why we're here. So with that, I hope, it's like I said, I think it's fairly straightforward, so I don't want to go on too long about it, but if you have any questions or anything I can address, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Questions? Mr. Kelly?
Yes, thank you. So you said waivers plural, but the description I heard sounded like there was just one.
Correct. So, yeah, thank you. I apologize. So the waivers would be from 703D8 and 7 and 8. I don't have the exact language in front of me, but essentially they both deal with surveying the entire property and showing everything on both properties for the adjustment. Let me see if I can pull up that language for you here. Okay, so, yeah, here we go. So D7 is a requirement for a boundary survey, including bearings, distances, and the location of property markers. So that would be one waiver, because obviously we're not showing the bearings and distances and markers for all of Mr. Shirley's property. Obviously, everything for the adjusted line will be shown and the monument set. And D8 is the location of property lines, including entire undivided lot areas, and frontage on public right-of-way. Each lot shall be numbered according to the tax map numbering system. So for that, I guess I can go into a little bit more detail just to, clear up any questions. Our position is that Mr. Shirley's property is sufficient, that there's no concerns about conformance with the zoning ordinance. Mr. Shirley's lot, according to the assessor, and what I would say too is that if you look at your plans you have in your packet, I have an overview that shows both properties. Mr. Shirley's lot here is the one to the east, and there's a block that's basically formed by Baghdad Road and Old Baghdad Road. And all those properties, except for Mr. Shirley's, has been surveyed and there's a recorded plan. So we can be fairly confident spatially that the tax maps, at least in this case, are at least close to reality, substantially so. So the lot line adjustment would result in Mr. Shirley's lot being about 1.1 acres where 20,000 square feet is required. So he'd have, an order of magnitude, greater than the requirement, and that including the frontage on Old Baghdad Road, he'd have about 429 feet of frontage, 187 of that being on the Class 5 section of Baghdad Road, where 100 feet is required. So that's kind of where we're coming from in terms of that we don't think it's necessarily the burden on the applicant to have that entire property surveyed, both in time and expense, is not justified by concerns over zoning, which I think would be, in terms of the spirit of the ordinance, I think the reason for surveying the entirety of the properties is to make sure that there's compliance with zoning and there's no encroachments are going to occur. And I think that we've shown that in this case on both counts. So thank you for your question, for an overly long answer on it.
Did that cover it?
Yeah, I think very well, thank you.
Do we want to talk about the waivers at the moment, or pick that up after the public hearing?
I thought it was suggested to us in the planner's report to resolve the waivers tonight, so that if it wasn't acceptable, the applicant would have an opportunity to have the boundary done by public hearing.
All right, then,
If possible.
there it is right there. Okay, so what do people think about the waivers?
Well, I was just going to ask Michael, from the town's perspective, what is the risk associated with just having one of these performed and not two? It sounds like the town would like to have two performed, but I was just wondering what risk is involved with just having one set of this done.
Yeah, there's not a risk. It's nice to have it with lot line adjustments, unless one of the lots is very large. We usually have both lots surveyed, but it's not essential, and especially just for a small lot line adjustment. So it's nice to have, but I think Mr. Doberstein addressed the waiver appropriately.
Gary?
I was curious about the conveyance of this strip. When you, presumably the legal description and the conveyance, you shot and surveyed and tied the legal description to your calls in that surveying of the strip, and presumably the points of reference in the strip tied to points of reference in the existing survey, so you'd be in a position to issue some kind of an update, or if it would be an insurable conveyance, right?
Certainly, and thank you for the question. So, just to be clear, one of the unique situations as well, which I'm reminded of with that question, is that obviously this east-west boundary is the one that we're trying to adjust. The southerly boundary, Mr. Everingam's property actually falls short of the creek. There's a strip here that belongs to this lot. But Mr. Shirley's property goes to the center of the creek. And so, center of the creek is located, that's the property, have that line firmly established. The other property line in question is the right-of-way line for Baghdad Road. And we've done enough work to establish where that line is. And yes, there's plenty of reference marks. So obviously there's already monuments out there for the existing line. We'll be setting monuments for the new line. And then a deed will be prepared, and it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse because I'm not an attorney, I don't do title, but talk to the Evergams about the best way to incorporate that parcel into their property going forward in terms of legal descriptions to make sure that everything, nothing gets missed in the wash. I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, I think it does, and just want to make sure that there's no ambiguity in terms of defining people's property if there's ever an issue that arises with respect to changes in the zoning law, which aren't present now, but if maybe there's a, wetland buffer issue or something like that. But it sounds like it's all fine.
Certainly,
but
yeah.
As long as there's no ambiguity about where one...
No, I think, like I said, there's two lines that are...
Back to an actual survey with monuments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So just when I say we're not surveying the Shirley property in its entirety, does not mean that there's not been any survey work, and there won't be further survey work as part of this adjustment.
Got it, okay.
You know, yeah, we'll go back and set monuments.
I'm
and
fine.
Everything will be, yeah.
Richard?
And so by putting your seal on this plan, what you're certifying, of course, is that the parcel lot 68 Evergrande,
Yeah,
that's really what you're sealing. And while that requires you to investigate the abutters, if you were to also include that abutter, you would then have to expand that research and survey to collect all that documentation to make sure that those abutters to Shirley were all matching up as well,
correct. I mean,
correct?
there would be a significant amount of more work that would need to be done. I think, honestly, the, not most daunting, but the most challenging thing about the Shirley parcel would be, I think there was a comment from the assessor in the planner's report about that this, you know, the Mr. Shirley's, the deeds are very old, and there's some things that have happened. Yes, the deeds, the latest written deeds are from the 30s, because Mr. Shirley got the property through probate from his father. So we're going, you know, and Mr. Shirley is not a young man, so it goes back quite a ways. Again, all the properties on that block have been surveyed, so it's not a matter of, there's a great deal of ambiguity where the lines are. Honestly, the most challenging part about that, the Shirley survey, would be simply the old Baghdad Road portion and establishing where the right-of-way is, because the road's not there anymore.
I don't take any issue with the waiver request, Mr. Chairman.
No.
Who do I?
All right, then, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the requested waiver from 703 D7 and D8, is it?
Yes.
Right.
Second?
Seconded by Peyton. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, you have your waivers.
Okay.
And would anybody want a site walk for this?
Not me.
Yeah, I walk by it
I
all the
walk
time.
by there all the time.
Try it all the time, yeah.
Yep, all right, then,
I mean, it's pretty.
And you should accept it as
Moving a line
complete
like this,
also.
It doesn't even have a
we
wiggle
need to
room.
accept this one as complete. Okay. Right. I should spend more time with this page up, but okay. In that case, I'll move that we accept it, and it is complete to yours, yeah. I'll move that we accept this application as complete.
Yeah, I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? All right. Public hearing for September 24th.
Okay, thank you very much.
But before we let them go, would we have a meets and bounds description of what would be included and filed at the registry prior to September 24th?
I can prepare the legal description, that's fine, I mean.
Yeah, we
No, not a big
typically
deal.
have that, and some of us enjoy comparing it to what's on the plan.
So do I.
Wow.
And we have had the discussion about the fact that recording of the lot line adjustment does not convey the property. That conversation's been had,
Yeah.
so,
Okay.
Very good.
well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that would just be a draft deed for the 24th?
Yes.
If you can prepare
Yes,
that. Yeah.
no problem. Thank you.
Sundays. Okay. We need to switch to. All right, our next item. Item 9, public hearing for Riverwoods Phase 2, Stone Quarry Drive. Site plan for development on the northerly side of Stone Quarry Drive, including 2 senior housing buildings with a total of 55 units, a clubhouse, a maintenance building, and associated parking areas, utilities, and other site improvements. Conditional use for work within the 75-foot wetland buffer, including portions of the clubhouse, driveways, the relocation of a section of Stone Quarry Drive, sidewalks, stormwater facilities, grading, underground utilities, and other site work. Lot line adjustment for the relocation of a section of Stone Quarry Drive. Riverwoods Durham, Natalie Belanger, property owner, Eric Sari of Altus Engineering, engineer, Chris Bolt, DTC Lawyers, attorney. This is in the Office Research District, map 209, lot 33. That's a mouthful.
Wow, yeah, that was
Well
good.
done.
All in one breath.
Yeah, I know.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So this is a continuation of the public hearing. I would like to start with a public hearing, and then we'll get into further discussion, I think. Does that work with everyone?
Sure.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Do we have any hands online?
No, but I think M. Friedrichs is here.
Okay. Then,
Or someone named Emily anyway.
very good. Let me know if a hand goes up. All right. The thoughts for tonight is that we discuss open issues and start looking at conditional use criteria. Most of you have, yes, Daryl?
Should we close the public hearing before we do
No,
that?
we keep it open throughout the meetings because there becomes a potential legal issue for us to have a conversation with the applicant if the public hearing is closed.
It's a planning board.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, I know, I read that today. I just forgot.
So, I will start by opening up. Does anyone see any hot issues from your perspectives with the conditional use? I could go through them point by point if you'd like, but if you have any concerns about any of them, we could just jump to them right immediately. I'm not seeing any big movement. All right, so I had one, and that was, so my first one is when I look at the plan and I look at the conditional uses that we're going to be granting, they tend to be very different from ones we've approved in the past. And I was having a conversation with Mr. Barron, and we came to a realization that we're actually approving something we've never approved before, which is that our conditional use doesn't provide for us to approve grading for a residential building inside the buffer. It's a quirk because we are allowed to grant it grading, a conditional use for grading for a residential building that's outside of the buffer, but not inside the buffer, because it was never envisioned that we would have that type. Due to the variance, we now have that, and we need to come to a finding of fact as to how we're going to treat that. And the reason I bring this up is, from a legal perspective, if there's an appeal, we need to have a finding of fact on an item like that, or else the appeal becomes an automatic success. So for the protection of the town and the protection of the applicant, we need to specifically identify that, how we're treating that and why. Mr. Barron, would you like to, you had suggestions on the thought?
Yeah, Paul called me about it today. Thank you for the heads up on that. So the under 175-61 conditional uses, it does say following uses, including any necessary grading. Presumably, the necessary grading applies to the list of uses, but the uses does not include grading specifically. Although, so any grading associated with these uses, driveways, non-residential building, accessory structures, the conditional use for those includes the grading. But as Paul said, for the uses, the parking lot and the residential buildings for which variances were granted, there's not, it's kind of a quirk in the ordinance, there's not something in here for grading. So Paul and I talked about it. I think we may have dealt with something like this earlier. My sense of it, though, was as part of the variance, since the zoning board was approving the building and the parking lot, that would include anything integral to that. Not utilities, not drainage, but the grading, which is immediately adjacent. There was no mention, I don't believe, of grading in the variance process. Maybe Mr. Bull can correct me. But I would see that as the approval of those uses would include the adjacent grading.
All right, Mr. Bolt, would you like to?
Happy to, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, the map that is on the screen is the same map that was used with the ZBA. So the blue was what we were needing a variance from the ZBA for. The green and the gray was what we were needing to come back to you for conditional use permit. So we've been consistent with all boards. I read your provision of 175-60B11, which states grading of the site where grading within the WCOD is necessary to accommodate a structure located outside of the WCOD, is the flag that you're concerned with. I would argue that the legal term, and Attorney Whittington will hopefully back me up here, that it's the law of the case that now comes into play. Our variance creates for this lot the equivalent of the buffer being on the outside of the blue, because we now have a variance for that part of the building that was inside the blue. So that when we now come to you for a conditional use permit for the green, it is as if the zoning ordinance said for our lot, the wetland buffer is the outside of that blue line, because we've gotten the variance. I don't think you have a problem. I think you can address it with that kind of a finding, and that is why in my professional paranoia, I always give you the narrative. So how I think we meet all the criteria and the facts you need for finding those criteria being met, not just the you meet the criteria type of emotion. Hopefully that helps you enough to get over this hump.
Thank you. We'll see. So what do people think of this issue? Am I, Mr. Bolt and Mr. Barrett seem to agree. Does anybody have any concerns with that?
I'll just say that before anyone opened their respective mouths, my view was exactly the same thing. And that is that implicit in the idea of a variance is that it's a variance for this purpose, because otherwise nothing could be built there.
Right, and this is the first time I've seen something like this, and
I think it's a reasonable question, but I don't think, I think it's implicit in the power to grant a variance, that you're granting a variance so that, as Michael said, the integral work implied by that variance is also enabled.
okay. I was getting nods, and a curious look from Richard.
No,
so,
that's
okay.
not curious. But perhaps it would be prudent just to run it by our attorney as well, just to make sure that there's agreement, or whatever might be advised for us to document this as well.
Yes, we want to make sure it's properly documented as part of our findings. But other than that, So that was the only thing that I saw that was sort of going to be an issue because of you know, but the Conservation Commission has come in and said that they agreed that the work occurring within the wetland buffers properly address the 4 criteria. So,
And Paul, from an impact perspective, it looks like the slope, you know, the grading off the blue corner doesn't differ much materially from the grading that we've brought out to the other wetland in the front by the parking lot. So impacts don't look significant, which is another reason why we could feel comfortable that it's not a bad thing to do.
okay. Thank you.
One more thing, there was some email traffic about the buffer areas that are mandated by the state. And my answer is sort of predicated on the idea that the variance power of the municipality, is sufficient and our variance doesn't reach into any of the state mandated buffers, and I'm sure it doesn't. But that could be the only sticky wicket, I believe. I don't think we're...
There's no state wetland buffers on the property.
Yeah.
Or shorelands.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We will have to get DES approval
Right.
for the project overall, but it's...
Right, we had some
it's not-
email traffic about what the state, what state buffers can, I'm assuming nothing like that exists here.
No.
So, Mr. Kelly, would you like to wait until we hear back from the town attorney before taking action on a conditional use? Or do you think we can vote on it tonight? I mean, are you comfortable voting on it tonight?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Yeah. I mean, what's the rush, right? I mean, we're not going to wrap things up this evening. We will be discussing those other items that we're still, waiting on, correct? That you mentioned
We're
that.
still waiting on traffic and the third-party review for the stormwater.
Right.
I guess we're just looking for language to put in our findings that they think would be appropriate.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. Why not?
Exactly.
Why not?
And
Why
let's-
not get that language?
Let's get that language put together so that when we do vote on it, we feel comfortable.
Very good. Okay.
Is the third-party review for stormwater or for fresh water to the site?
It's for the water utilities, the wastewater utilities, and the stormwater management plan.
Yeah, the fresh water, the potable water, that's a different item that's also under review by Underwood. They're modeling the town system compared to some data that we got from some hydrant flow tests that we did a few months back, trying to figure out how this is going to fit into the bigger picture of the Durham water system. So that's going in the background as well, but it shouldn't really affect the design as you see the plan. It might require a fire pump inside the building, which is not part of site plan review, it's internal. And then the state is looking at stormwater and erosion control from alteration of terrain perspective, and then there'll be a sewer discharge permit from DES as well, and then the traffic permit with DOT. Bob Bollinger might be on the line. He can give you guys an update if he's on Zoom. Bob? Maybe Bob's not on Zoom.
No, I'm here.
Oh, beautiful.
Sorry.
Takes a minute to come through.
He needs to get first cleared by our person downstairs, and then,
Oh, he's on Zoom.
so it's
He
good.
might just be having video issues. Oh, there we go.
My apologies. Technical difficulties on mine, but yes, I did pre-register, so thank you for your patience. It took me a moment there. For the record, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Robert Bollinger, traffic engineer from Graham and Peterson. We're still trying to work through our DOT comments. I actually heard one of the other board members earlier this evening mention the left turn pocket. We're in the process of trying to develop a concept plan at the moment that should be we should be able to resubmit back to DOT tomorrow So obviously, we want to stay engaged with DOT and keep that process moving. But we are working diligently to hopefully bring that permit, towards a conclusion. Unfortunately, I don't have a date certain as to when that would be issued. But presumably, this board would condition any municipal approval on obtaining any requisite state permits, whether it be DOT, AOT. But I did at least want to provide the board with an update that we're continuing to work through that process. And again, as we're trying to do that as expeditiously as we're able to do. But unfortunately, sometimes the time lag with DOT and some of the other state agencies, it's something that's a little bit beyond our control, but we are certainly trying to work through all matters at the state level.
And when Bob talks about left turn pocket, that would be coming south on 108 towards Stone Quarry Drive. So you'd have right in this location here a left turn lane.
Can't see that.
You're not seeing the map, okay?
It's right by his eye.
Can we put the map back up? Beautiful.
There we go.
Okay. Southbound on 108 past Canyon Road, right in here would be a left turn pocket. So you'd have a dedicated left-hand turn lane. That way anybody turning left on the Stone Quarry would have a safe refuge there. We're not sure if it involves any widening. If it does involve widening, it might be a foot or two. There's a lot of space there.
That's right where the bus stop is. So you're now going to be asking people to try to cross when there's 3 lanes of traffic there instead of just 2?
I'm not sure that's going to be DOT's call. So they're going to look at it. They definitely will see the bus stop. So they flagged that when we did the sidewalk project. So we'll see what they say. It's one of those things where we can only just design something, throw it at them, and they come back with comments, and that may take a while, or it may go quickly. You never know.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed it goes quickly, but
I know, I can see people piled up to make the left-hand turn, people trying to cross the road, and people coming around southbound not seeing them because of the cars that are in the way.
yeah, we don't anticipate a lot of queuing. This was a marginal warrant, from what I understand. I don't know if Bob wants to jump back in, but the need for a left turn pocket was about that big, and of course DOT made us do it.
Hopefully, they decide it's
Silly.
not necessary.
That's what our position is, but it's their road.
Any whispers in the right ear would be greatly appreciated.
Oh, Mr. Chair, while we have the traffic engineer, something that I wanted to mention.
Yes.
It occurred to me earlier today that the board should make a determination, Chris is going to love this, but it should be fine, that the board should make a determination tonight, if possible, whether this is a development of regional impact. I don't think it is, but on any significant project, the planning board should make a determination. Obviously, minor things are not. A development of regional impact is where a project is of such a scale and potential impact that it can affect neighboring municipalities in a meaningful way in terms of traffic, water usage, wastewater, the use on the site, environmental impacts, that kind of thing. We've only had, very few developments of regional impact in Durham. For the original project, actually, the board determined that it was in terms of construction traffic, with trucks coming down Dover Road from Dover, about potential impact on Dover. And we looked into it. Stratford Regional Planning Commission did an analysis, and there was not a concern. This is substantially smaller than the original campus. I don't mean to spring this on you. It'd be helpful if the board can vote tonight, because if you were to decide that it is, then we need to notify municipalities and the Regional Planning Commission. But I wonder if...
does anyone feel it might be?
No.
No, so I don't even see a motion forming.
No.
Or you should... I don't think we need a vote as long as there's clear consensus that it's not.
The original was not, right?
The original was only for construction traffic from Dover.
Yeah.
Nobody said it was a concern outside of this room.
Outside of this room, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. It wasn't ever, called one.
No.
And that was this is nothing compared to the original project.
Yeah.
All right. So we're clear on that. Okay. Thank you.
All right, is there anything more for the applicant?
Well,
Any more questions for the applicants?
We've got
Or the applicants have questions for us?
the memo from Michael, if you want to go through those items, just to get those issues behind us.
Which,
Oh, just my review.
Yeah.
Can you put it up on the screen?
I don't actually have it on this computer. I can walk through it real quick. One is the final plans. Michael is suggesting a couple changes to the plans that we're going to have to do.
oh, okay. This is what, so you're referencing the things that are on, it's in our packet under Michael's planner's review for this item. So, so these are
Would you like
basically
to see it
things,
on my screen?
yeah. So, let me see, so temporary parking, so you,
I can just blow through them real quick.
yeah, if you want to blow through them real
somebody
quick,
needs
go
to
ahead.
verbalize
Yeah, the first one, the final plans, we know that there will be changes, of course, not only from, suggestions from this board and Mr. Barrett, but also from the third-party review engineer, so that will be forthcoming once we get the third-party review. Conditional use we talked about. Temporary parking, we're looking into that. We're probably going to end up putting signs on Stone Quarry Drive, just say no parking. It'll be simple, and then it becomes an enforcement issue. DOT we talked about. Sewer and alteration of terrain we touched upon. Construction management plan. Now, this is something, Michael, that typically we wouldn't do in terms of a plan until we actually have a contractor on board. The reason being, I could plan something all day, and I can tell you it's going to be wrong. The second Tommy Severino looks at it, he's like, no way. That's something I would take as a condition to have done for the pre-construction meeting with the town. That way, everyone's on board, everyone that's involved with the construction can look and say, hey, where are your trucks coming from? Where are you going to stage from? What's going to happen, X, Y, and Z, and in what order? Rather than doing it now, because if I give you something now, as I said, it's not going to be what's going to happen in the field. It's going to change. So I don't think we want to
So what
waste that
we could
effort.
do, yeah, Richard. yeah.
Well, perhaps, though, you could provide the parameters that many of your current clients and abutters are going to be concerned about, such as hours of operation.
Yeah, all of that is
So
already in there.
maybe those
Yeah.
parameters
Well,
could
we
be-
have a written plan already. It was submitted with the packet, so that's all there, including the hours of operation, which are also on the plan. It's more of the, actually, Mike's looked for a physical plan is the way I interpret it. Looking, this is where contractor parking is going to be, this is where staging is, this is where we're going to stockpile, all those things that I can guess at but are not going to be correct. It's just because the contractor is going to do it their way, and I can't foresee how they're going to approach it, because every site is different.
So if we get that as a, it'd be either precedent condition or
Yeah.
perhaps even just before pre-construction.
Yeah, that's exactly
I can then share that electronically, and if any board member has comments, you could let me know.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Frequently, they will come in at that pre-construction
Yeah,
meeting. So
absolutely.
that it's the last body to come into the team saying, this is how I'm going to do it. We communicate with you. And it's simply a condition subsequent for this board.
The contract hasn't been awarded yet, so I can't really pull someone in at this time, unfortunately. Number 8, the energy checklist. We did do a meeting with the Energy Committee the other day, and some of their comments were rolled into a memo, and I believe that we updated the checklist and sent it back to Michael today. Mr. Kelly, the trench overlay, we did have a discussion about that, so we are going to be looking at a mill and overlay of Stone Quarry Drive from where we start the curve all the way back here to the driveway. And then this section of the existing Riverwoods driveway as well will get covered because there's a trench going across there. So rather than have a trench, I'd rather do the whole thing full width.
And there's an island there, too. isn't
There is a
going
median
to-
there, correct. Yep. So this whole section here gets covered over new pavement, so that'll cover up that nasty trench.
All the way to the corner?
All the way to the limit of work, which is right here.
No, at the other end.
Goes right to where we start the work for the corner, yes. Yep. So everything we touch is going to be brand new asphalt. DPW consultant review, we know that's ongoing. Hours of operation, they're in the site plan regs, and I believe they're also on the plan and in the construction management plan. Bicycle racks, we have interior bicycle racks at each one of the buildings, with the exception of the community center and maintenance. That way everyone gets indoor storage, which is great. And we are going to add a few locations of exterior storage as well. Right in here, right over here, and we're looking at this spot right in here. So that if someone brings a bike from, let's say, the main campus and bikes over, they will have a place to secure their bike on the exterior. Also, those are going to have this one and this one, and on the buildings, they'll have exterior outlets as well. So if someone has an e-bike, they can plug in there if they need to. Accessible spaces, Mike, I did verify that we do have an ADA space in each garage, so that's there.
I mean in the proposed maintenance garage.
That one, there's no ADA staff, and I don't know if the code requires it. However, you can see this little space right in here. If the code compliance, the final review determines that we do need it, the ADA space goes right there. So it's already set up with the painted aisle, so it's easy to do.
All right, yeah, I'll check with Audrey Klein on that.
Yeah. Taxes, that's an ongoing argument, or negotiation, I should say.
We got update from town council today that the desired format has changed, and they're going to get me a draft. So it looks like there will be an agreement for the existing building and then a mirror agreement for the new buildings, rather than try to amend the first one or make reference only to the first one. We're going to have two, in essence. So the same methodology that is applicable to the ILs on the south side will apply to the ILs on the north side.
So you're going to be negotiating for the second, for the newest one?
That is my expectation. And originally, town council wanted to amend the existing. We said fine. Then there was a concern of, well, because of the status of Stone Quarry, do we merge the two lots and have it be one, or do we keep them separate and have an amendment apply? And they came back today with we'd rather do a second mirror agreement. So at least as of about 3:30 this afternoon, that's the town's desires, and we are fine to accommodate the town's desires.
Sure you
When Mr. Bolt says town council, he means the town attorney.
Town
right?
attorney, my apologies, yes.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to cast aspersions on two of our esteemed members.
Please.
Number 15 is landscaping, and I've got Vicki Martell here from Woodburn and Company. She'll answer that one.
Good evening, I'm Vicki Martell from Woodburn and Company Landscape Architecture. So Michael noted in the memo that there is a requirement, which is totally correct and accurate for him to point out for the parking spaces. If you could point for me,
Do the
Eric.
photos.
On the plan.
Oh, you want okay, the plan?
Yeah, I just want to, I can't point. If you could point for me to the parking lot in question on the west
This guy
building.
right
Yes,
here, right?
yes.
Yep.
For those parking spaces to be shielded with low evergreen shrubs from the roadway. And I elected not to do that in favor of the fact that we are going to be maintaining a dense, tall stand of vegetation in that existing wetland and wetland buffer that I think will totally effectively screen that parking lot, more so than planting shrubs right on the edge of the parking lot. And I went out to the site a couple of days ago.
Now you want it.
Now I want. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with the lot we were talking about, and took a couple photos so you're able to see that. So there are trees and shrubs. They're tall and dense. And I think that they're going to do a really nice job to screen that parking lot. And it's a little bit tricky to plant on the edge of the parking lot, though I'm happy to do that if that's what the board and Michael would like. There's a slope on the edge of that lot. There's also...
Doesn't like the photos, Vicki.
Doesn't like the phone. Oh, maybe.
It's thinking about it.
It's thinking about
Oh,
it.
there we go, all right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So that vegetation there is staying. And as you can see, there's trees, it's tall, it's thick. I think it's going to do a really good job. In an effort to preserve the wetland and the wetland buffer, about a third of the parking lot itself has a guardrail right on the edge of pavement, and that's backed up by a retaining wall. So there's not a great place to plant, but I'm not concerned about that restriction because we're working with all of this here. So if you all are comfortable with that, that was my rationale for not adding additional proposed plantings in that area. And so I'm happy to discuss that with you and to address Michael's concern about the plant list. To avoid any confusion, so the plant list, there was a note that some plants aren't on one sheet and are on another. What you're looking at is a master plant schedule for the entire project. So that's the standard way for the plans to be prepared. It offers the least amount of confusion. So that list is the same on both sheets. All the tallies, quantities, and species are the same, and that just provides some efficiency and the least amount of confusion in terms of bidding, acquiring those plants, and just standardizing the set. So that's the reason why there are some plants that are on one sheet that aren't on another, but they all appear on the same plant list that is copied onto both sheets. Yes?
Just in that picture, where would the parking lot, it's difficult because it's so flat, visually, but where would the
Yes.
parking lot sort of exist in that space?
It would be sort of like behind.
Yeah, this one's a little bit better. So it'd be behind this screen.
And if you look, do you have my plan, Eric?
Mr. Barron, what road are we trying to screen from?
Oh, just from Stone Quarry in front of the parking lot.
So that's
And
about
the third picture,
150
Eric, that's from Stone Quarry.
Do you want the plan?
I'm sorry.
But, I mean, it's not like, it's the only people walking by there are going to be Riverwood, so I hear what Ms. Martell is saying.
That's taken from 108, so you're also visually.
This is taken from Stone Quarry.
No, that's Stone, I'm actually I have the map in front of me, I have a scale, I have a tape measure.
We need to get you a scale picture.
You got a compass too over there?
I do not have the compass, but I'm taking about a 45-degree angle towards Stone Quarry Drive from that point where the retaining walls are, which is the closest point to the actual wetland as well. And my measurement comes out at about 150 feet away from the closest edge of the road to that point that we're trying to buffer. And I don't know, in my mind, normally we say if it's more than 100 feet, we don't have to buffer it, right? I mean, there is a limit at which we say distance is a buffer itself.
Yeah, I think so.
So I don't really see that portion of it is a concern.
Well, and it's all natural vegetation. If you actually tried to plant something, you're going to have a new plant trying to fight an existing
Correct, and that
vegetative-
slope is going to be seeded with that conservation seed mix.
Yeah.
So this type of vegetation is going to start to come up that
Right.
slope between the parking lot and the buffer. So I'm not overly concerned about the visibility. I mean, certainly I think if it was a concern, there's going to be a window of time when that parking lot is in place and plantings aren't done. If the town had a concern at that point, we could put in some supplemental plantings, but I don't think it's going to be necessary.
Richard? I'm sorry to ask you to do this, but can you go back to the plan? Because I was with Gary, and I thought I thought we were looking from 108 at the western edge of a parking lot.
Would you like
Now
me to
I don't know
measure
where
from
the hell we
108?
are.
Oh, well, no, the intent is from Stone Quarry directly into the lot.
Into the parking lot that's on the
Right through here.
on the west side of the west building.
Yeah.
Yes.
So seeing the edge of this from 108 and from Stone Quarry.
Yeah.
And this is the wetland in here that is really thick, because I've tried to walk through it. It's, oof.
Yeah, you can't walk
Difficult.
through it. I think in this case, it's sort of a difference without a distinction. The angle from Stone Quarry is similar to the angle from 108. In either way, I think that existing stand of vegetation is providing adequate buffering.
So is there a vegetation buffer if you're looking at it from 108 as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
But that's what to me is important, I mean, you know, if
Yeah,
you're
we
driving into this, you're.
We have a natural vegetative buffer, which is what we always ask.
Yeah.
That's what we're asking.
And that's
why I
the
was focused on it, because that seems like the more relevant.
I agree with you.
aesthetic
Yes.
Thing.
Yes.
And
yes.
we're almost twice what the required setback is from
It's
108.
quite a ways
It's
away.
ways, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what that dashed line is.
Right.
And I would say that that buffer is continuing to mature and it's in an early stage of succession. It's only going to become denser, taller, bigger, more effective in screening.
Any further questions on this item? All right.
All right, the next one was lighting. The lighting plan is unobtrusive, it meets the regulations. Thanks, Michael. The lighting is proposed for 3,000 Kelvin, which is lighting temperature. Mike is asking, is 2,700 Kelvin preferred? Lighting works on a spectrum. The lower the number is more red, the higher the number, up to 10,000, is more blue. Daylight's about right in the middle, about 5,000. We're calling for 3,000, which is warm. It's considered warm, quote unquote, because it's dark sky compliant. 2,700 pushes it into soft lighting. And what you lose once you get into that more yellowish, orangey spectrum, you lose a little bit of definition. With this particular clientele, I'll put it, the residents here, I want to keep a little bit more of that definition there than make it too warm and have an issue. They're still able to drive and whatnot, but I think we could help them out as much as we can. So that's why I kept it at 3,000.
The only reason I raised it is we've been talking about lighting color
Yeah.
recently.
Yep. And there are cut sheets in the plan, Michael, on C22. Architecture, do we have someone from AG on the line?
Just Bob in here right now.
Okay, all right. We are talking about more windows on the bottom floor, which is the garages. Let me go all the way to the bottom.
Yeah, just on the front of it, if you can pull it up.
Yep.
The front, which is the lower right.
Yep, these guys.
You can see right in the middle on the bottom floor, which is the garage, there's windows. I assume those are real windows.
Those are real windows,
Those
yep.
are real windows. I would really suggest adding just a few more to the left of there. It has a real bunker look, and adding a few windows will soften that.
In speaking to the architect, we can do that. So that's that. Addresses, the fire department will assign addresses later. Great. And then porous pavement, talking about signage. There is signage right now on the existing campus. It just says porous pavement, which we will add to the plan as we go forward with the revisions. And that's it.
Also, under architecture, I noted, maybe
You
other
love
people-
this red and blue accent, don't you?
Well, see what other people
Flagpole
think.
do
but-
it?
No.
What?
I think
Don't-
we've
I mean,
addressed
don't
this
you
twice.
think
No.
just
No.
So we had this discussion.
You brought it up
Wait,
twice
wait.
now. This is the third time.
Historically, we had this discussion for the main building, and it went to an architecture review, and it came back and it said, because of the size of the building, we want to keep the colors muted, and we don't want to have bright accents. And now that we're expanding the campus, as has rightly been said, the client would like to keep the same format, because if you change it and make the buildings look different, then the residents start saying, they got a nicer building than I got, and
We
it
can't
creates
have
a
that.
lot of strife.
Can't have that.
It does create strife. It does.
So
You just,
we're going to stay out of the color business.
If this was a different project, Michael, I would be on board with you for sure. But in this case, I think having a unified architectural theme is the way we want to go here.
I think the color that it is now, the way it came out, looks very appropriate.
Yeah.
And I think you would have, Michael, I need to give you the book from Dr. Seuss, The Sneetches on the Beaches, and this is what will happen, is that, I live in the building with the red, and you're not as good as me, and I'm in the building of the gray, and it's, no, you've got to have it all the same.
Yeah.
Or it will be a marketing nightmare.
And I think the architect, said there was a language. that was
There's a
being
language
developed
that-
here.
yeah, we want the
And so
buildings to
I
talk
would-
to one
I
another.
would think you would keep that consistent
Yep.
language, and far be it from us to, or from, to say what that language should be. It looks like there's a coherent theme, and
Yes.
it's very well thought out, and so it seems reasonable to me.
Yeah.
And just to remind folks, we are taking the color from the existing barn up on 108 into the middle of the campus with the new
With the- yeah.
community center building. So that will have a different color, but tying those two pieces together in a consistent way rather than the flight of spring coming through on one level.
The blue on that is a nice touch, and it looks
Yeah.
nice, and that is actually a very nice blue that goes very well, so that's,
I wish I could say I picked it, but that's okay.
it'll look really- now it'll look nice.
Is that enough blue for you, Michael? Okay, good. Paul?
Yes.
Just one question. On the energy checklist thing, I know you had the meeting the other day. It's advisory, but can you share with the planning board the flavor of the quality of the environmental benefits that you plan to include into the MEP design or shell design, so people, and the intent of this is, it's going to be here a long time, is it energy efficient, and is it a good build as opposed to a less efficient, poor build?
Let me say it this way, because I'm not the tech guy, but I can give you some of the right words. This is being designed as a wood on pylon structure. So it's using primarily sustainable wood. We are evaluating both the HVAC system for finalization, but we are expecting gas furnaces and what are called DX coolers.
It's pretty good. Wow.
We're exploring foam insulation, which is technically not allowed by the current building code that the state has limited us to, but is allowed by the 2024 International Building Code that Audrey is thinking she can apply. We are definitely doing some EV charging stations. We're trying to figure out where and how many. We have been given this morning the Energy Committee's suggested regulations, which are coming to you tonight for discussion. I'm not sure if we meet all of those or not. I have, having just one set of eyes on it right now, some questions on what do you mean in a few places. But we are trying to implement that. We also can say what our current practice is and the expected practice is for this current campus. We buy 100% green electricity, and we pay 100% carbon credit for the gas that we use for the furnaces. Our model, as you know, is a congregate care. You're coming in, you as a unit a resident don't own the unit, you have an agreement with us. Certain things are covered by the monthly service fees, including those utilities. We're looking at solar, but one of our concerns is we have fairly limited southern exposure. Michael suggested I drive by the middle school. I did so. I took some pictures this afternoon, seeing what they do on the girders over certain parking spaces. I haven't even had a chance to present that to my client yet. One of the things I would note, however, looking at where those buffer lines fall around our buildings, your ordinance does not allow solar in the wetlands buffer. It does not even allow the conduits to go through the wetland buffer. That might be one of those things to think about if you're wanting to truly encourage solar.
That's one of those compromise positions
Right.
where you have the water quality versus the energy efficiency. But I'm thinking didn't we allow them over parking lots?
Oh, sure, over parking lots, yeah.
I think we permit them on parking lots. So if you have a parking lot, which you have a variance for, then by the earlier discussion this evening, you should be able to put solar on it.
We will take a look at that. Those are some honking big girders.
Well, I don't think
Yeah.
you necessarily need to be as tall as they are. They had to get above
That
the
was the
trees
plan.
behind them.
And the bus.
And the school bus.
And the
school
schools.
bus.
And they wanted to put school
Oh, yeah.
buses underneath.
Yep.
But, I mean, you still
Yeah.
want to
Okay.
make sure your vehicles, necessary vehicles can fit underneath.
Fair enough. I think that's the gist
Yep.
of the Energy Commission.
Pretty
We-
good for not being a tech though.
Memory. We have an open issue on trash, whether we meet with your, it's called Integrated Waste Management Advisory Committee. We do recycling now. We do have at the maintenance building a compactor planned for already. So that will take campus-wide trash, and we have on-floor recycling trash centers. So current residents, we're exploring, trying to document what current residents now do. One of your members of your Energy Committee is also a resident and is very active in the recycling efforts. So we know there are batteries, light bulbs, tin cans, cardboard, things like that. So that would be expected to be in the new buildings as well.
I believe he's also on the Integrated Waste Management Committee, or at least he attends all the meetings.
Oh, Steve Fellows?
Yes.
Oh,
I think the other thing they'd be interested in would be composting out of the kitchen. I think that composting is an
That would
area
be
of
the other thing
interest.
they'd really be looking at, I think.
Okay.
But they actually are looking at broad spectrum recycling as well.
Yes, yes. I was just adding the
Yeah.
compost portion.
You pay by the ton to have that garbage removed, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking some out of the stream is not a bad idea.
Right.
Composting would certainly reduce that incredibly.
General adjustments, it might be different at your place, but, I mean, you could probably get the numbers as to how many pounds come out of the kitchen and stuff.
Yeah. We can look at that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so question regarding the third-party review, which I think is number 10, is the way Michael's presenting that. Oh, maybe it's there. So it's, the third-party review is not of the entire application and plan set, but it's focused solely on stormwater, water, and sewer?
That's correct.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
The real technical engineering stuff that
Right.
another pair of eyes is always helpful on.
But Ty and Bond is focused solely on stormwater and sewer, and we have a different entity looking at the water?
Underwood is
Is that what I
looking
heard?
at the modeling of the water system, but the actual design in the plans is
Oh,
still under
okay.
Ty and Bond's
All right.
purview.
Got it.
Yeah, Underwood just wants to make sure that given the pressure that's out there in the system now, that this is a dead end. They want to make sure we have enough pressure for fire suppression in the building, which we should, given that we have a building just like it right there. But you never know.
Very good.
So let's dial us back for a moment. There was, let's see, when were you last here with us?
2 weeks ago.
August 27th. And I believe I asked about that statement in the drainage report. And it was explained that it was kind of a protect your bum sort of language, I think was what
This was
used.
the minimal adverse effect
Yeah.
phrase. Yeah, we put that in there just because you never know what's going to happen in a storm. But in terms of storm water, and if you compare apples to apples, you've got your pre-existing condition and your proposed condition after the project is built, there should be no adverse effect to abutters downstream or upstream, particularly downstream, in terms of stormwater runoff, simply because the peak rate of runoff is going to be lower. So we're not going to flood a road or anybody's basement or anything like that.
But about a week before, when we last met, on August 19th, you met with the TRG.
Mm-hmm.
And I only got the notes, Rob mentioned that, the notes came to us this week from that, I believe. And in there, the our DPW director kind of pointed out that they've had reports in the past of downstream impacts. So we're going to want to take a close look at that.
It's definitely
Do you
possible.
recall that being discussed?
A little bit briefly, you've got a lot of water coming through the site, obviously. It's very wet. Let me go up through this one. And then there's a stream on the right-hand side, which takes a lot of this parcel, the McGregor parcel. So there's a lot of water going towards Route 4. Both of these subcatchments go towards Route 4 ultimately. In extreme rainfalls, given the poor quality of the soils here, you're going to have a lot of runoff. And I think that's probably part of ongoing climate change, where you're getting an increased rainfall on these massive storms that used to be a 2-year storm, or used to be a 10-year storm. Now it's a 2-year storm. So it's happening a lot more frequently. In our case, we're actually going to help that because we're retaining some of that runoff and choking it down so the peak rate is less in the proposed condition. So it should help with any existing condition. It's not going to solve all the problems of the world, of course, but it should help any issues downstream. And it'll lend a helping hand to that.
Rob? So I see 3 different outlets.
Yep, we got.
Did DPW mention where the downstream issues had been?
I remember Rich's comment being very general and not really saying there's a specific incident. So I don't think he really detailed it, but he kind of just touched on it in that meeting.
I mean, without any more detail, we don't even know which part of the project we'd be looking at.
I mean, the front part,
would be the
I've
issue.
never seen Route 4 have a problem on those drainages. And that side that's coming off right at the intersection there where the trees are, the free trees that are growing, that's got a big hole through now. So, and it's got plenty of storage capacity below that. I don't think there's a specific impact from the build.
All I can think of would be maybe the off-ramp of Route 4.
And even that, it would, I mean, that's,
It's
forget
so
biblical level at that
incised
point.
there,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's deep.
It's deep, and the gradient is rather steep.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Because
capacity
I can't
there.
think of where else downstream you would see a problem.
It could be perhaps there was a maintenance issue where you had a culvert that was clogged. That does happen on occasion. Maybe the DOT didn't clean out the culverts on Route 4. I'm just throwing that out there, spitballing, but it's definitely
Yeah,
possible.
Maybe you could follow up with Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah, the storage looks huge to me in all those ravines, and
Yeah, there's a lot of
after-
capacity.
if it hits the biblical flood, then who knows, right?
And along those lines now, so
Coming from the
the 25-year storm event I see now, 24-hour storm event now, is running just under 7 inches.
In terms of rainfall, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that used to be about a 50-year storm.
Right.
Yeah, they're changing that gradient.
And is it our requirements that compel the applicants to look at a 25-year event?
It's your requirements as well as AOT, but AOT takes it a step further because we're in a coastal community. We have to add 15% to the runoff just to get a little bit more because we're in a coastal community. We're more rainfall prone than the interior. So that's a general rule for all AOT projects. So we're accounting for 15% more runoff than if we were doing this project in, say, Farmington.
So the 1.15 times the 6.93 inches?
The
Or-
6.93 is the product of that.
I see.
Yeah.
But there's no requirements to do a check storm. So back in the day when I did this work, we would often run the event, the 50-year event,
Oh, yeah.
as a check event.
We've run the 100 on this, and I believe that's a town requirement. We always run
Okay,
that.
that's where I was going,
Yeah,
yeah.
just to make sure that we don't overtop any ponds.
Yeah.
And we don't in this case.
And that 100-year event is buried in the HydroCAD
It's in the
data?
calcs, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, and what is that rainfall now for 100?
It's massive. It's a lot of runoff. Yeah, I can.
Well, I'm just
I can find it.
curious, how many inches in 24 hours? Typically, those numbers are what everyone remembers.
Off the top of my head,
You've stumped the man
All right,
here.
gotcha.
I bet it's 12.
it's way up there. Somewhere in here. Okay. 9.94.
9.94, thank you. Thank you for indulging.
In
That's a
24
100-year
hours.
event?
Yeah, that's a 100-year event, plus that includes the extra 15%.
Okay.
And that's a lot of runoff.
Yeah, that is,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
gosh, it's ark building time.
Yes, it is. All right.
Yeah.
Is what it is, yeah.
So in the sake of time at this point, do we have anything more? Either way?
We appreciate your questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for the guidance.
We're good. If you guys don't have anything else for us, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
We'll see you in a couple of
Continue
weeks.
to the 24th.
24th, and hopefully we'll get some votes. We'll hear back from our attorney, and we'll be able to start taking some actions.
We
And
appreciate that greatly.
Are we expecting to hear back from the third party?
They're hoping that they'll have a response in the next week or two.
DPW, we may get the response back, but DPW may not be ready to comment on it.
I see. All right.
If they are, then who knows?
Again, any help on that front would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have an SRPC meeting coming up before then, so we'll see what happens. Thank you, gentlemen.
Happy
welcome.
to. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
See you soon, Chris.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. Let me introduce you. Item 10, electric vehicle charging stations. We have a proposed amendment to the site plan regulations to create more electric vehicle charging stations. This has been developed by the Durham Energy Committee, and it's being presented by Michael Klein, Chair of the committee. We are not taking any actions tonight, other than perhaps a brief discussion afterwards, after our Q&A session with Michael, with regards to where in our priority list we'd like to slide this in. Go ahead. All yours.
Great, thanks for hosting me. Again, Mike Klein from the Durham Energy Committee. It's good to see some friends here. Rob and my neighbor Manish, great to see you. And Paul is a member of the Energy Committee or attending the sessions. And we have our previous chairman, Matthias, who's here in the crowd as well. So we've been working on this for about the last year, and we wanted to spin through it here. Okay, so I'm going to start with some definitions, because you're going to see some of these throughout the presentation. I just figured I'd start right up front with the definitions. So we have EV prepared, which is, a spot that's has conduit and electricity reserved with room for the future, right? So electricity that's available in the panel. We have EV ready, which are like the spots ready to go. So all the pieces are there, including the wiring through the conduit. And this will make sense in a second why I'm going through this. And the last one is, an EV charger there and ready to use. So think about at the Durham Library, right? There's an EV charger there and ready to use. So you go from like having some capacity in the panel all the way through to EV chargers there and ready to use. And as you go from left to right, like these things cost more, right? So it doesn't cost a lot to just have empty conduit buried with no wire in it, and just having an electric panel that has the ability in the future to put in electricity needed for the charger, to the second one, which is where there is conduit and there's a dedicated circuit, there's just no charging head on it. And then lastly, the charger itself, which is the most expensive, but it's also the one that's the most ready to use. What we're proposing here only applies, and this has come up a lot, so it only applies to projects that are subject to this committee here. Only applies to multifamily, commercial, or other non-residential properties, which include things like Riverwoods, and we'll go through those details. And then talking about renovations, it's only upon the creation of new parking spots or resurfacing of a driveway all the way down to the subsurface. So if you're just putting seal coating on top of a parking lot, that doesn't trigger this, is what we're proposing, right? Importantly, it does not apply to single-family households, right? So that rules out a lot of the housing and a lot of the items in Durham. Oh, you know what? I just realized I started in the middle. I was like, wow, this seems like it's different than it's
Flying by. Seems like it's going really fast.
Sorry. It's funny. I was like, wait, this sounds different. It's from waiting for the last hour and a half listening to this meeting. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm going to go through. So that means I'll go through those slides much faster. So I want to talk about why we're here, motivation for change, the details of the proposal, some make it real scenarios, and then implications. So the Durham Energy Committee was created in 2007 to support the energy goals of Durham, including the Climate Action Plan, right, which is an important plan that we've committed to as a town. The Durham Energy Committee has those 5 goals on the right, of which this proposal affects goal number 4, supporting EV ownership through the education and infrastructure installation. So importantly, the infrastructure installation at this point. I'm going to call attention to New Hampshire state recommendations, and I highlighted some of the words there just to call your attention. To support and encourage increased adoption of electric vehicles by New Hampshire residents, including actions to hasten the development of electric vehicle supply equipment or chargers necessary to charge EVs, as well as to increase sales. And there's some references at the bottom there about SB 517 and whatnot from 2018. This is a chart, and it's maybe a little hard to read on the screen, but there's kind of a cone of uncertainty here as you go into 2030. US national retail EV forecasts. With new administration in place and ever-changing laws, we don't know. We expect, it's hard to judge the steepness of that curve, right? It could not be as strong of growth as it was before, but it is for sure going to continue to rise. Like that's all that we're reading, all that we're seeing, even anecdotally as you drive around. I think everybody's seeing more and more EVs. This is some data from the chargers that we have at Pettibrook, right? Pettibrook parking lot. That big dip that you see around May, June is from a lot of the students leaving, right? So, but you see kind of this upward trend. And this resulted in, over the last year, this is for the last 12 months, 35,000 kilograms of greenhouse gases being, averted, right? So the folks that charged here didn't put 35,000 kilograms of greenhouse gases, which is the equivalent to 580 planted trees, taking 7 cars off the road, and saving about 14,000 liters of gasoline. So it's not insignificant. Or, another way to think about it is a small neighborhood in Durham. It took the entire greenhouse gas impact of that off the road, just from those 2 chargers. Okay, so now this is the part that I've already gone through. So we're going to talk about these definitions. I'm not going to go through them again, but feel free if there's questions. It applies to these things. It does not apply to single-family homes. And I'm going to take some time to go through these next couple scenarios, these make it real scenarios. So what we're proposing is, and there's a document that, Paul, I don't know if I'm assuming we've circulated that Word document with the changes, proposals?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been around a couple times, right? So this is all the same information out of it, just in a slightly more consumable manner, right? So if somebody was building a new multifamily dwelling, so again, new construction right over here, what we're proposing is 5% of the approved parking lot spaces be EV installed. Okay, so that's, got a charger on it ready to go. Another 25% EV prepared, which means that there's conduit, buried. Because again, if you're building a new site, it's the best time to put conduit under the ground and allow, it'll make it a lot easier to run wires in the future. If they're doing a renovation, you see the percentages there, slightly less. And to give you an example, if there was 20 parking spots, that would mean there'd be 1 EV charger ready to use on that site and 5 spots prepared for future conduit running and chargers put in place. And then renovations, slightly less. I'm going to go through 1 or 2 more examples, then I'll pause and feel free to take questions. This is the majority of my presentation. Institutional senior housing is how it's referred to in the planning. So I think this is where the likes of Riverwoods, where it would fall into. in a new construction, if it was 100 parking spots, we're recommending, 3% of the EVs, 3% of those parking spots be EV installed, again, charger ready to be used, and 25% prepared for new construction. So if there's 100 spots going into the new Riverwood site, 3 chargers would be put in place there. And it sounded like from the previous presentation, they were planning on some chargers anyway, which is great. And then we would ask and submit to this committee that we'd also have that construction include 25 EV prepared, which means, again, conduit run, but piping run, right? So that they can future put the wires through and get the stuff in place, right? So it's really, this is all about like preparing the town to support EV growth in the future and using the opportunity at new construction and in some cases renovations, while there's easy access to the soil and different things, to either put in new chargers or put in the conduit so that they can run the wires later. So so there's hotels, motels, bed and breakfast lodging. We hit a couple of these different scenarios. And then lastly, commercial construction, which I'll pause at this one and then I'll open for questions. So like, for example, I think we were thinking the Technology Drive lot or something like that, like some of that, commercial construction. If there was 150 approved spots, 5 of those would be EV installed, again, 5 chargers on the lot, and 38 with piping ready for wires in the future, et cetera. So I'm going to pause. I know I went through a lot and I started midway and then started over. Any questions? Or Paul, you've been pretty close to this since part of the Energy Committee. Any thoughts or additions you want to add as well?
This is where we go down the thing. I have a few faces I normally look at and think, yes, Richard?
One of them. So I noticed that for an installed spot,
yes,
it's only level 2 that we're requesting.
Yes. So, and part of the reason, you might be asking why, right? Like, why not more or less?
Well, I'd like to understand why.
So
why level 2?
Level 3, from what we can tell with the zoning, is only allowed in Gas Station Alley here. Like per the current zoning plans of Durham.
Is that the only thing that prohibited you from a 2 and a 3 there?
No, it also requires, and Matthias is a professional in this space, and you feel free to weigh in, but it requires much higher energy. Level 3 is a substantial increase from level 2. And I think it requires 3-phase electricity as well.
Yeah, we would essentially what
Matt, can you come to that?
So essentially, what requiring...
Microphone.
Have it right in front of you.
Oh, I always do this. I was chair of Energy Committee for 3 years, and I still do this. So what requiring level 3 chargers would end up doing for a lot of the properties that we have is vastly expanding their requirements for their electrical rooms to the point that it could start to incur a significant financial burden. A level 3 charger is going to take a very large breaker. I can't remember off the top of my head, but at least 100 amps. So that can mean the difference between paying for an off-the-shelf breaker box that you would buy for any commercial building to having to get a larger one built, custom to spec, more electrical work. The cost started going up pretty precipitously, and what we were worried about is this proposal imposing undue financial stress on anyone who's trying to help economically.
And when we call for a level 2, do we still need a charger, if you will, because of the sort of the universal aspect of the male and female ends, whereas people have level 2s at their home, right, that is specifically sort of, that female end works with their car and only their car. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple standards. There's kind of like the Tesla style, and then there's
everything else.
Yeah. And I believe, if I'm correct, they're all over time moving to the Tesla style over the next several years.
My new EV came with different plug adapters for any
Exactly.
plug.
Yeah.
You just have an
So-
adapter and just.
And they are all kind of,
So are we asking, or where I'm getting at with this, are we asking for a charging pedestal where I've got the gun in my hand to put in the charger? Or is it the other way around and we're asking the vehicle operator to plug something in?
So right, so at EV installed, just pull up and charge. And we didn't get to the specifics. Does that mean a charge point with the whole pedestal and, billing mechanisms and whatnot? Or is it just an outlet that somebody plugs into? I think that's what you're asking.
That's what, bingo.
We did not get into the specifics of that. What we're saying is that the power is available, that you can pull up and charge. We also didn't get into the specifics about, and I'll just throw this out there, like potentially like a landlord or whatnot of a multifamily home or an apartment building, they could charge, right, with ChargePoint and actually we're not saying they can't do that, right? We're just saying that from an energy committee, from a availability of EVs, availability of charging infrastructure, we want to make sure that the electricity is available in these different types of building facilities.
so in the case of someone having to pull up and bring their own cable and plug in, that landlord would not really be able to monetize that charging at all, and it would show up on their energy bill. But what we also wanted is to leave those options completely open so that in the case of, say the Hannaford's lot getting completely redone, that if people wanted to lease out charging to an independent charging company and, take their money in the form of lease rent and then have the charging company monetize the actual price of charging, they could do that. We didn't want to dictate how the cost of charging would be either offset or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I view this as, especially with all the conduits that we're asking to be put in, right? There's future growth. So we're trying to lay the groundwork for some of that future growth that we see happening and all the different variability that Matthias just talked about. I should have mentioned at the beginning that this ordinance or proposal that we put together mirrors largely Lebanon, New Hampshire, and several other towns. Dover, New Hampshire has an ordinance very similar to this that where they require, the percentages might be slightly different, and again, that's something we could discuss. We tried to make it reasonable without it being a burden. We also removed, again, this middle column, because we said for simplicity for this first proposal, it's either there's electricity at the spot, right, to pull up and use, or there's, conduit ready, then you can run the wires in the future. Because copper is expensive, and if we said, hey, you need to have 25 spots with copper being pulled through it, that could be expensive and, could be adversely seen, right?
It also, can allow for the planning board to, in the course of discussing any particular site plan review, to possibly split the difference, perhaps given the particularities of a single site, EV installed is just not something that can happen. You still have the definition of EV ready to kind of be Solomon and split the baby if you need to, for lack of a better phrase, or if there's something else going on a site plan that may affect taxation or pilots or something like that.
Yeah, so I had a discussion with the Energy Committee's council rep, and he's excited about this because once it goes into effect, they have a lever now for their 79E that they can use to start pulling and saying, hey, people, you want to qualify for a 79E, look at this and go over the standard.
Right.
Just a couple of questions. So we just had a level 2 charger installed at our home.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of different things at play which you talk about. One is, does your breaker box have capacity?
Yep.
Right. And so on a new build, I think that's fairly straightforward to probably add that capacity, although it might be reasonable to see what are additional costs, because you would want to have capacity for your 25%, not your 3%.
Yep.
And so what does that do to that base level installation? For us, we actually had like 5 different quotes, and one person quoted us that we would need a completely new breaker box.
Which is expensive.
Right, and so that was like 5x the cost of not doing that. And we already have some other electrical stuff with battery backup and generator and that kind of stuff. But so the cost associated on a new, is significant just with that before you start running the conduit.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, when you start running the conduit, you would kind of need to anticipate where that's going to go, and it might be wrong. That decision might be wrong initially. So I guess I have some questions about. I'm sympathetic to the ask, but then there is sort of you need to upgrade your base level breaker box, and then you also need to get under the ground and start running conduit where you may or may not actually require it. So I guess there's a question about, the new, and then on a renovation, I have been part of fairly significant condo renovations where we've repaved down to the base.
Yep.
And that was a pretty big job just in itself. And so I think of the complexity then of going and now figuring out where do we add the electrical, and then how do we stage out the conduit run on that when we're trying to just deal with ripping apart a really big parking lot, which is already complicated and really expensive.
Yep.
So on the renovation, that to me seems complicated. On the net new, I'm more sympathetic to sort of that, but on the renovation, that seems very complicated, potentially very complicated and expensive. And there's another, I'm part of another condo association in Portsmouth where we all have dedicated parking spaces.
Yep.
And then that gets very complicated. Well, we all have named parking spaces, so there's some details about like that. And then how do you just even, share, how do you deal with that, and how do you share the cost? So on net new, there are concerns about costs and running things before you actually know what you want to do. And then on renovation, I think there's significant costs there and complexity that would need to be considered.
This is what we debated for 9 months.
Last year. Yeah, I mean,
I will point out, Payne, one of the advantages of this being site plan regs as opposed to zoning is that it becomes a lot easier for us to grant a waiver.
Yes.
In the case of a renovation.
And we do specifically call out that any applicant can make a case for hardship. We consulted with 2 or 3 different master electricians who regularly install EV chargers, and we talked about that was one of the reasons we stuck to level 2 charging, is because of the question of dedicating extra space in a circuit board, and also how the conduit runs end up having to be put together. I will say, in most cases, you're going to have a spine to your parking places. That's kind of what I've been taught to call it. So like in the parking lot in Hannaford's, you have 2 rows where they touch, and then you have the lanes, and then you have another 2 rows. The spine where you can't drive through because everyone would park there, that's where you would run the conduit lines, generally speaking.
Yeah, and building on your example, I think this one here, so you're saying like if you were in a condo association similar to this, and you were taking the pavement down to the subsurface, if this passed, we would say, all right, you're doing a renovation, you have 20 spots, we'd ask you to put in 1 power spot and piping, conduit for 3, right? And I think with the point you're bringing up, and we did debate this a lot, is that 1 and the potential 3 require space in the electrical box, which could trigger an upgrade, which could trigger, reaching out to Eversource and needing more power pulled, and could get expensive quick, right? So that is part of the reason why we didn't go with that middle definition, right, where the space was reserved in the box, right, and the conduit was run. So we tried to actually minimize it based, a lot of people had the same comments that you said. And like Matthias said, or Paul, you might have said it, like this allows space for this community to grant a variance if that type of thing were to come up, or grant an exception, I don't know the right language.
I think just sort of the other side of that is, and I don't have an EV today.
Yep.
But I think the other side of that is that as EVs become more popular and so on and so forth, if I were a condominium owner, and not a condo owner, but if I had a, whatever, condo complex, part of that, my condo complex might be less desirable if it didn't have all the EV facilities and all of that good stuff. So on one hand, for me to make it, it's an investment, as Peyton points out, but on the other hand, the return on that investment could be pretty significant. And at the end of the day, for most business people, it's not about the investment, it's about the return on investment.
Yeah, excellent point. And I think the other thing with the student population, right? I mean, a lot of the student housing and whatnot, it's going to be hard in the future for students to have EVs, which will become commonplace, even on the used market, right? And then not have anywhere to charge it except for at the library or Pettibrook, right? Yeah. So that's kind of what we're planning. That's the future we're planning for as we march towards this of an increased EV presence.
And in the case of the 20 parking space condo, if you have one installed spot and then 3 prepared spots, that's still just one conduit. It's one whole pipe with 4 holes in it. But what we're doing is asking for people to size that conduit to be able to be ready down the road, which, if it is accepted that it's inevitable that they'll probably need 4 spots in that situation, we're actually saving them it costing much worse afterwards if just market forces force them to do it. Yeah. So it's that was kind of what I was getting at. We didn't want to create too much undue financial burden, but we also kind of knew this was going to add something. And I think as an energy committee, we would be very happy if you guys did want to debate the percentages and come up with something different.
Yeah, this is just a proposal. For the sake of time, I mean, there are different stakeholders we called out, developers and builders, some of what we heard earlier today, increased upfront costs like you described, but you're also future-proofing that investment. Town residents, right, more access, cleaner air benefits. We do have both an identity and we have a climate action plan that supports, right, increased sustainable action. Economic impacts, Manish, you called to that as well. Like, there are long-term economic benefits as well as environmental. So, yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, in conclusion, we would recommend and ask this committee, right, to adopt or modify, right, the recommendations that we put in so that when new construction happens or substantial renovations happen, that, EV infrastructure support is thought of.
So the way I think about this is that there are a lot of market forces at work, okay? And those market forces are going to be the primary drivers of this transformation.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
But in certain cases, the interests of Durham as a town and the interests of developers may diverge a little bit. For example, let's say you had a project downtown and there was some parking and we could require an EV charging station, but there was no obvious need for that business, for their employees and so forth, to have an EV charging station, or because of financial constraints, they wanted to minimize the upfront cost. But Durham might find it desirable to have an additional EV charging station, because people driving around looking for a place to stop because they're watching their battery go down might be encouraged to visit downtown Durham. And so in cases where, but in general, I think everything's going to move in this direction anyway, but I think it's very appropriate to ask people to especially have a look if they're removing pavement and they're in a situation where they can just dig a trench and lay some conduit.
Exactly.
Where the marginal cost of that is really quite modest.
Yep.
Instead of putting the paving on and then complaining about an economic hardship later.
Right. That's exactly it.
Right. So one technical question I had is with the let's say you have a 5% requirement for ready to go. Okay.
Round up. We always round up.
There's a floor. In other words, that's if there were 19
Round up to the
spaces,
nearest
there's
one.
one.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
And that's in the longer document, but I didn't include the fraction, yeah.
Okay. Well,
And of course, if the parking spaces, if there was really not that many, it's totally up to the site plan and the planning board to say, you don't need it.
yeah, so I would just say that from my point of view, what we should be cautious about is doing anything that sort of presupposes that we really know exactly what's going to happen in terms of what, I think there will be new standards and so forth. So we need to maintain maximum flexibility and not presuppose that we understand exactly what's going to happen technologically. And we should not try to envision the future and create it, but we should instead deal with those circumstances where the town, that's our role to advance the cause of the town, right, where we might need to give developers a little nudge.
Yeah, and it was great to hear the previous presentation that they were already thinking about chargers.
They're already, most of them are
which is
going to
great.
be thinking about it, most of them are going to
It's good marketing for any
be
new
eager to do it,
setting
most
up.
of them are going to want to be perceived as forward-looking and there's not going to be that much, I don't think the situations where there's not a unity of interest are going to be that extensive. I think they're going to be broad, unified interests in doing this, and that's what's going to drive it primarily. Not us, but I'm in favor of a kind of a nudge.
That's kind of why we made our amperage and voltage requirements just kind of, we cite the NEC code, like we're not trying to make minimum, you got to put aside 100 amps of possible power for chargers or anything like that. There needs to be space. However, space is currently defined for at least a level 2 charger.
And we should allow for the deferral of those design decisions until the time of
probably pulling the permit.
Never make a design decision in advance of the demand.
Yep.
And that's why we got rid of
the middle,
the middle one, because that could trigger someone having to apply to Eversource for a larger service than they would actually need to use at that moment.
Yeah.
Once you install something, of course, if your service isn't giving you enough power to actually run that, you're going to get upgraded anyway. And that's why EV Prepared doesn't trigger an increase in service level.
I did this as part of a renovation of our house.
Oh,
I'm EV prepared.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think, Richard, you have.
Yeah, just a point of clarification.
Yep.
The document in front of us refers to a proposed ordinance, but the agenda item and the memo that our planner has produced refers to our site plan regulations.
Yeah, we called it an ordinance for a really long time until Paul corrected us.
Okay. So it is site plan.
Yeah,
We're looking to incorporate this in the site.
We just didn't understand the distinction until he pointed it out like a month ago.
I have a question on the document as well. You have a category for hotels, motels, bed and breakfast lodging, and then below that is a commercial, retail, and other institutional construction that includes rooming or boarding houses, fraternities, sororities, and then some kind of non-residential commercial uses like auditoriums, theaters, churches, restaurants, retail stores, so kind of short visit thing as opposed to overnight visit kind of things, or 9 months of residence for fraternities and sororities. Could you, and in that second grouping, that includes the rooming and boarding houses, fraternities and sororities, you limit the calculation on parking spots just to employees.
Yeah.
Can you comment on your thinking behind including fraternity, sorority, the rooming, the overnight lodging facilities?
I believe
that I would have put with hotels, motels.
I believe we were actually copying how they're separated out in the site plan regulations,
The groupings.
if I recall correctly. And then the employees part was, we weren't sure if we were able to talk about things for students. Our minutes taker had an issue with it. I don't recall what it was.
Yeah, I mean, there are some issues with calling out students as students. I'm not sure that the students, the ownership of the fraternity and sorority houses is, they're not owned by the students, they're owned by other things, other
call them
organizations.
tenants,
So I don't know. I was
owned
just curious to hear your thinking on that and why it ended up where it was. Okay.
We punted.
Yeah.
This is where we're-
That would be something
We
we'd wanna-
defer to the way you guys think about those things, and we really weren't sure.
But the groupings that you outlined were from the site plan, yeah. We didn't make those up, those came from,
We were confused why they were separated.
yeah.
I think Peyton.
Just a couple more, and some will be high level and some. So I have a Tesla, and we just drove to Hanover. And so I charged to 100% before I left.
Yep.
And then I got up there and I was like at 65 or something. And then it was difficult actually to find a charger. And I figured at Dartmouth there would be one, but Tesla's only showing me level 3. And so then it's a question of, so what do I do? And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna park it here, eat lunch, and then on the way home, they're Tesla superchargers at the Common Man rest stops. And then I'm like, well, I'll just stop there for 20 minutes and just juice up. If I had gone to a level 2, I wouldn't need to sit there for a couple hours. But on a level 3, I could just go in and I could just plug in and then I could get home. And it actually calculated I was going to get home anyway. So I guess there's sort of some broad questions. One is the idea of sort of mandating that people install level 2 chargers. I installed one in my house, and I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I totally agree. It's going to be electric. Europe's at 15% new market share. It's going to go there. I guess the question is do you start mandating level 2s everywhere, which are somewhat inefficient, or do you just have other ideas where you just say, hey, someone that's in the business of doing this, just come in and build 20 superchargers on some land that we gift to you? For instance.
Oh, that gets into the gasoline alley issue,
Yeah.
which we also wanted to avoid.
Or so I guess there's some questions about, distributing level 2 chargers all over the place. Seems like a good idea if you can use it all the time at your discretion. But if you only have a couple of them in a parking lot, it's not the most efficient thing. And you've kind of pushed some costs down to that developer to do something that is sort of a gray area right now. I'm not quite sure how this is all going to shake out. It's quite possible it's going to shake out that you have 15 superchargers and you just show up an hour a week and just supercharge.
Yeah, I see your point. I mean, I think, Dover now has 12 superchargers.
Right by the Rite Aid or the CVS,
by the CVS.
right there.
And they also have this a similar ordinance in place because of the large apartment complexes that they're building and the residents wanting to be able to charge, right, because they don't have the right to install, right? They don't have the right to install. And same thing with a lot of, I think, the students and others in town here. So.
And the 12 supercharger situation, that is a for-profit enterprise.
Yes.
What we're outlining here is the bare minimum that we think people should be able to meet, and we would very much hope that people went up to level 3 for all of their spots. But we were under the impression that could limit development in this town, which has a lot of like kind of odd spots and odd lots, you know?
I think the point you bring up is that if there was a dozen spots right here in gas station.
It'd be great.
Alley, like, would there be need for any other
And
level
if
two?
the town has a compelling interest, which I think it could, I think you can make the case the town has a compelling interest for this, maybe the town should just make some land available for some level 3 superchargers. And then it's quite possible that could cover, I can just go down and in 30 minutes I can plug in and I can be done, and I don't need to consume that level 2 charger for 5 hours. So that's a, philosophically, I guess if the town has a compelling interest, maybe the town should make some things available. And then the other is if the market sees demand, well, then let that person build it. If they don't see demand, maybe there's not demand right now for them. Now, of course, if they're looking forward, they would say, if we're going to build net new, we should do this. But then they might have the same question I just have, which is, how many level 2 chargers do I actually need here if I have 100 people and I only have 5 level 2 chargers?
I think those situations are very possible, but I don't think they preclude this baseline ordinance.
So Peyton, do you think, is there information you're trying to get out of them, or is this just a debate that we're probably going to have later as a planning board?
No, I'm just trying to hear the thinking of not to say pushing down, of requiring a net new build to have that in the absence of sort of a clear definition on where this is going to go, and if you think that trade-off is worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you just, I drive a Tesla. I work for Liberty Mutual Insurance. They have 6 chargers at their office in Portsmouth. They're constantly full. Portsmouth also has superchargers available. They're there and available, but people still, because they're there for 8 hours.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Plug in, and by the time you leave, you're topped up, right? So I get what you're saying, and I think, the market forces could say, hey, this is a better direction, or this is a better direction. Like Matthias said, I think we're just asking for like the base level to say, hey, let's put in some conduit, let's nudge them gently, right? And say, this is a good idea if you're not already thinking about it, which hopefully most are.
And again, going back to the town council lever, I think.
Yeah, well, and there's, there's a rumor that Irving's going to get a remodel. They could always replace a couple of those vacuums with charging stations.
Yeah.
They're in Gasoline Alley. They're allowed to put bright type trees right now.
And maybe there's a real maybe we should think a little bit about different kinds of development and look at whether the subject development is the kind of place where people would park their cars and stay for an extended period of time.
Right.
Where the level 2 would be just fine, like residential.
Yeah.
But even if there's a level 3 charger, I'm still going to have a level 2 like you do in my house.
And these are weeds that we'll get into when we actually pick up the site regs.
Yep.
I think that's good.
It's up to 9 o'clock.
One last question, if that's okay. It's a quick one. Does the Energy Committee have a map of where 3-phase power is available in Durham?
We have
that you could share with us in terms of evaluating
the state has a list.
Yeah, you can look it up on the Eversource website.
You can pull up a map and see where they all are.
It's called the hosting capacity map.
I think Durham's a little tricky because UNH has phase 3, if I remember, but we can't tap into that or something. I don't know. There was some different.
The town can't tap into it. It's all part of Eversource's grid. So actually, neither of us have real jurisdiction over it. But pretty much the run of Main Street is 3-phase.
108 and Route 4.
Yeah. And then some of it extends into some of the neighborhoods.
Durham Point Road got a lot of 3-phase last year.
Yeah, and Packers got upgraded to 3-phase recently.
Those happen to be exactly the places where we don't want to be seeing little 3 chargers.
Right, exactly. Well, it's going to draw traffic.
And again, that's mostly residential.
Yeah. If you were, we did brainstorm, and I know we're at time, but you know that little truck stop or the pull off on Route 4 that's in there? That's not, it's the state road. It's not, that'd be perfect, right? Because it's right on a busy road. It's a state road.
It's owned by the state.
Yeah, but that would be a good spot for, now would that?
But it's westbound only, really. I mean.
It is, you're right. It's westbound only.
Kind of dangerous if you're heading eastbound.
Good point.
Very true.
But let's assume that was there. Does that mean like, you know, a student living in an apartment building wouldn't want level 2 available to them? Like I think they still would. Like you said, you'd still have a level 2.
I mean, level 3s are meant for the people who are on a drive and need to get home. You need to do a recharge in the middle of a long trip. That's really the purpose of level 3s.
Can I just say one more, only because I just bumped into a kid I used to coach in soccer, Colin Runk. He lives out in California, he lives in San Diego, and he has a Tesla. And he doesn't drive it very much. And he doesn't have a charger at his home, but once a month he does go to a level 3 and charges it up. So he, leaves, goes out on Saturday morning or whatever, goes to a level 3, charges it up, gets full, comes back, and then he's sort of done for the amount that he drives. So
there's a lot of different human behaviors. For sure.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different ways to do that.
Yeah, but that's why I think, well, we'll get into it when we get into it.
So I hope you consider the proposal. We spent some time debating it within our own.
Why don't you stick around for like 5 more minutes? So from the board, we had gone through last month sort of trying to set our priorities on our work with regards to zoning and site plan regs. This falls into the small things we can do while we're doing a big thing. Where do you guys think it falls? Does it fall pretty high? Should it be the next thing we pull up with regards to a small thing? Or or is there something else we want to throw in there?
I think we'd get through it quicker than conservation subdivision, even though it's later to the game.
Yes, no, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, so Mr. Barron can spend some time now massaging it into the format for site plan regs.
And it's a site plan,
not
amendment.
And then we can take a look at how we want to redraft,
Be great.
Massage it ourselves.
And we put together quite a bit of research over this time. So we can probably dig it up in our email.
Well, I think the PowerPoint or the presentation, however that was, whatever format it was in, is important to get to Michael so that we can get it onto the town's website.
And then if you do have any background links or background research that you could share, because I'm sort of all digital, so if it's up in that sort of digital packet, I can take it down and I can look at it. That would also be helpful. And not a must-have, but if you have it, it would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think the citizens would like it as well if it was available, on our
Put it in the
website.
planning in the folder for that project.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, gents.
Thank you so much, Rose.
That was excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, they get it.
It's not that good.
Paul, when I could have it October 8th or any time after that. When would you like it?
October sounds right. I want to see what the agendas look like before we pull it up, but.
All right.
Thank you again.
Thanks.
Peter, it's your turn. You're up. You're going to be filling in for Richard Kelly for the rest of the night.
Okay.
Richard had to have an early evening tonight. All right, new state laws. Proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance to comply with recently adopted state laws affecting land use. So, Mr. Barron, this is you.
Yeah, so there was a slew of new legislation in Concord this year. But the main ones, land use related, that affect us are the 4 here. I show them in purple. And I include recommended language to come into compliance. Note the effective dates of the 4, respectively, September, now. ADUs, I don't wear the effective date of that, and One of them is regarding multifamily and commercial land, that's July 2026. And about parking is now. So I think these seem pretty straightforward. There was one thing Paul and I were talking about on the third one about multi-unit, whether that would need to be in...
Can we go through them in order? Because we
Sure.
had a question on the first one.
Oh, okay, yeah. So those are the four.
All right, so you ask, is there value in retaining our lodging house, rooming house definition? We created that simply so that we could manage how many people are in a structure, and where in town you can have the denser rentals, and now it seems like we don't need it.
It
So
was
I
I
just-
just 3 unrelated lost.
Yeah.
have
You know, the
one
only
on that
question was if somebody's going to, the fire marshal might enforce this if it was helpful as a reference for people.
Yeah, I think, I just have one comment. If you go into the assessor's database, there are buildings in town that
There
are called rooming houses. So I don't think it's horrible to leave it in if it's written the way we think it's written.
There is one.
Now, whether we
There is one.
then in the zoning have it somewhere categorized in certain zones, that might be a different story, but just in general, it doesn't hurt to have it because we do have areas that have that description as their assessed dwelling unit description.
There is one on
No, there's one up here, there's one
Yeah.
down next,
Well,
next to the university on Mill.
Right, we're simply not allowed to put it in the table of uses.
Yeah, exactly, I know.
So, I mean, if it's not
In the
going to
table
be
of uses,
used
why?
anywhere in zoning, if it's simply an assessing tool, I'm not sure if having it in zoning is helpful. But you're thinking
Well, they have-
it shows what the limits are for a lodging house, rooming house.
We,
Yeah. What other
um,
folks think?
We were going to allow them somewhere though, weren't we?
I
No.
stayed, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, sorry.
I stayed at Highland House, my wife and I stayed at the Highland House out on Wisville Road when we first came here and we were house hunting. That was a boarding house. She provided breakfast, etc. But I don't know how a boarding house would work at this stage. There were many during the Second World War, but in a college town, unless it's really, really well managed, well, that would happen when they come in the site plan. How is this going to be managed?
Yep.
I just
Okay.
bring it up, it's up to you all.
I mean, well,
I
I'm
guess
not
I don't really understand how the definition functions to how it relates directly to items in the zoning ordinance that are within our purview. So I'm sort of like grasping around, trying to get a handle on what the issue is.
It doesn't. We're just-
And if it doesn't, I think get rid of it because that's what we do. I mean,
And we're trying to simplify this ordinance as much as possible. And
Yeah.
get rid of redundant
if it's
stuff.
in the fire code, that's what really the regulatory nexus is,
Right,
isn't
right.
it?
Yeah.
It is.
The purpose for it is redundant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would be just
Okay.
an aid to the fire marshal and a property owner, but it's not about zoning.
So on
But
to
it
number-
already exists for the fire marshal someplace else, right?
Yeah.
And all we can do is just remind people that they're gonna
Well,
have
this-
to talk
not
to the
this,
fire
I think it's
marshal
because it was-
if they fall in that category, which
Yeah.
will happen automatically in the building side, so.
Yes.
That's all happening, right?
Yeah, that all happens through regular procedures.
Code compliance review and all that.
All right, so the second one, HB 577,
So, did I hear we're in agreement that that should be just strict?
yeah, we're
Yeah.
going to scrap the
Yeah,
first
I agree.
definition. So with regards to this
Wanted to make
one,
sure.
this one's fairly straightforward, right? Because it's, and, but number 5, so the question is, does the board wish to remove the number 5 requirement?
What?
Oh, page
Where are
3.
we?
Middle of
Page 3 now.
Oh, we're on page 3.
Under HB 577, so we're looking at 175-109, item 5, an interior, so this has to do with the ADUs and whether or not interior door shall be provided between the dwelling and an attached ADU. I don't think we need to keep that. I mean, I think that
The door,
it's an option. That's totally up to the owner whether they want to have that option. in
the
mind.
door
I don't
serves
think
no
we could-
purpose.
I don't think we could articulate a clear public interest in enforcing such a requirement.
I never really understood why they had that door, because it actually goes against fire code, because it's just a normal door. It's not, they don't require a fire door, it's just a door. And I always considered it a bit creepy and invasive, and
I
I
think-
don't see a reason for it.
Because when it was a mother-in-law's apartment, not a stranger in your rented unit,
Well,
I think
then
that's probably
Well, to be
what
honest
they
with
were
you,
trying to do is
with
more,
If no one wants to do it, fine. then
let's
they
just
can-
get rid of it
If they
and move
want
on.
If they will find it, they
They
can.
can get rid of it.
If they
Yeah, I
don't, they don't
agree.
need to.
And not require it, I don't think, I think it's ridiculous. It's very
All right,
strange.
that's that side of the room. What about this side of the room?
I agree, just remove it.
I'd say it's.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's no reason.
And, per the new law, and you're suggesting number 11, accessory dwelling units may not be converted to condominium units.
Right.
I think that goes without saying, doesn't it? An ADU is an accessory use to the primary. The minute you make it a condominium unit, it's no longer an ADU. It's a
Well,
two-family house.
That'd be so complicated and economically impractical.
It's not
to
an
change
ADU at
title.
that point.
Yeah.
If
They
you
have to
make it a
change the whole
condominium, it
title
becomes
for
a
the whole
two-family dwelling.
parcel for 2 units for one. I mean, it's very inefficient and
I
expensive.
mean, occasionally somebody might ask, and just having it there makes it clear,
But then they would have to
you
go
know.
through the process, they would have to condoize their
No,
property.
we would approve it
That's not-
anyway.
that
but-
seems very
Yeah, I don't think
far-fetched,
we
doesn't it?
need number 11.
Is it in the law? Is it in
It's
the
up,
new?
to it's up to you whether,
No, it's not in the law.
Oh, because it says
No.
per new law, so I
Number
was.
10
No,
is
that's
per
number
new
10.
law.
Oh,
The green
oh,
con-
I see. Oh, they're below.
I
Got
don't
it.
think we need to
Sorry.
worry about that. It's just such an odd thing that it would be the accessory unit. I mean, somebody would have to think, I suppose they could condoize their house
Yeah.
and accessory dwelling unit if they wanted to go through that, but,
But then it becomes a multi-unit structure.
yeah, I know, but
It's no
a-
longer an ADU.
Yeah, it's no longer an ADU.
So it doesn't, I mean, they're totally leaving this article and going somewhere else in
Now
our
they're,
zoning.
leaving- yeah.
So we're going to get rid of that 11.
Yeah, we don't
and
need
move
11.
on. Okay.
All right, and then, the last change is required, the parking space one for that. All
That was
right,
one.
so now we're on to HB 631. I don't see any notes on this one, so this is all new stuff.
it's just the table there, yeah.
And this has to do with, all right, so let's just double check the table. And we're saying, so you have P question mark across the thing. I think that that's what it says.
It says that. It says permitted. I mean, when
I actually think we might have to allow it in CB1 and CB2 as well.
yeah.
What we do, we allow mixed use.
Yeah.
You can allow mixed use, which we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, we can require it as mixed use, so as long as the mixed use is there, we're covered.
It's all Ps.
Okay,
That's how and I've reread that over and over again.
yeah.
And it's, those that are assigned for commercial must allow
I see that
them.
as correct, the way you have it.
Yep, must allow multi-unit.
So, this may be a stupid question, but in the commercial core zone, CB1 and CB2, wasn't the
Mixed use.
effect,
It's mixed use.
It's only.
So it has no, the only effect to us in the CB1 and CB2 is that we have to get rid of the conditional use in CB2 and make it permitted by right.
Multi-unit residential, what? Or
Well, that's the interesting thing. We can either require it, we have to require it either as residence multi-unit or as mixed use with residential. We can do one.
Or the other. Oh, okay,
or
that's
both.
why, because okay.
So we're okay keeping just a mixed use with residential in
the-
CB1 and
The
CB2?
call that's being made here, and this is perhaps worth a moment's discussion
Yeah.
before we throw it out to a public hearing, is since the default was, since we already allow it as a conditional use, let's just make it permitted. But the other option would be also allowing it as a standalone permitted, but
Without the mixed use?
at this point with the current outline of CB2, I don't really see that as being really a valid choice.
The state's rules allow it to be a full-on residential, but we can also make it mixed use with residential. We can allow a commercial component with it, which is, right, it does say that in
We're
the
allowed
thing.
to require a commercial.
So we
That's
can.
that's the
so that
question in
means
my
we
mind.
can-
Are we allowed to require
Yes, we
commercial?
are allowed to require it.
So to clarify in my mind, that would make our mixed use with residential permitted in CB1 and CB2 fine, that we don't have to allow. Do we also have to allow multi-unit, non-mixed use in
No.
CB1 and CB2?
No.
So
One
it
or
could be
the
one
other.
or the other, okay,
It can be one or the other.
okay, that's good.
If we want to do both, you can do both, but it
Yeah,
has,
I think
has
it's
to be
good.
at least one.
This is
So just my question for you is, the definition of commercially zoned land means land zoned for such commercial activities as retail and office space. So the 4 research industry zones all allow office by right. They don't allow retail sales, they allow conference centers,
They allow-
light manufacturing.
But you just said or in the
Yeah,
legislation.
so the question is, is Mudor, for example, is that a commercially zoned land? It says land zoned for such commercial activities as retail and office. Mudor allows office. It doesn't really allow retail.
Doesn't matter, it
allows
says
things
office
like
already.
animal
It's
care,
such
hotel.
activities as.
So that's my question for you.
And
is that
And
commercially
Gary's
zoned
and
land?
Gary's saying yes.
I'm saying yes.
And Michael, if you
Now-
recall, just one thing, this is in the Housing Task Force recommendations.
Well, I just want to make sure we're meeting the state
Yeah.
requirement
Yeah,
here.
I'm
Now,
saying.
we have a third option.
What is that third option?
The third option for any of these zones where we think this is a mistake is to go into them and remove the retail and office as an option.
Yeah. And then what do we make
Because
them?
then, it would no
Residential?
longer be triggered by this rule. But
But then they would become
when we look
residential.
when we look at these other zones, I mean, does it make sense to take retail out of courthouse? No.
No.
No,
Does it make sense to take the office out of Mudor?
no. But my question,
It
Paul,
does, it's a valid option. I mean, I'm throwing it out there just so
Well-
that we're not accused of not thinking about things.
but what would they become?
Well, they still would do everything else that they have on the table of
But
uses
what would
that they
they
currently
be,
do.
but
Light industrial.
they would become light industrial?
They're-
But that's a
they're right.
commercial.
Well,
I mean, those are all commercial, so I've just done.
it's, when you look through, there's actually very few commercial, there's a lot of institutional uses in some of those zones. There's not a lot of commercial. The office space is actually, I think for Mudor, the only thing in there that comes close to triggering this.
But it's what we.
However, Mudor is one of those areas that we were arguing, we put it in the overlay district, whether or not to put it in the overlay district, because we see that as a place where we want dense housing.
Could be mixed use too.
Especially it's going to be adjacent to the UNH project,
edge, yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm new here. Under CB2, why are we not including residence multi-unit as well as?
Because.
Can I finish my question?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. As well as mixed use, because mixed use says you have to have retail or office on the bottom and residences on the top. I'm still not done. Some development might want to put buildings there with retail, and some only residences.
And
well, why wouldn't we want to allow them?
Earlier, I said, given the current outline of CB2, which is a bunch of UNH land and Mill Plaza, let's say Mill Plaza wanted to tear down one building and put up, the property itself would still be mixed use. They would have to remove all the commercial from the property in order to qualify as being residence multi-unit.
Not according to what it says here. Because it says the buildings have to have office space and retail on the bottom and residential on the top.
There is,
if there's no office space on the bottom, then it doesn't meet that.
Although the Mill Plaza project had a number of just multifamily buildings. Let me see. I mean, the proposal, but I think the ordinance allows that, allows multiple buildings, for what that's worth. Let me just find that.
this is where you need to get sort of into the weeds of the article itself as opposed to just looking at the table of uses. But if you are doing a campus-type property, it is, if you follow the rules, you are capable of creating a building that has, if you're doing 3 buildings, 2 of them would be mixed use, the third one might be just pure residential.
Okay, that makes sense.
Just
But-
commercial.
But then we should take this out of here, because this is misleading.
Oh, which is misleading?
To say that it has to
The
have-
caption on the table of
Just
uses.
put mixed use.
Well, actually, but in the section of the ordinance under central business, we do say under mixed-use building, if you have multiple buildings, some of those can be strictly residential.
Okay.
I mean,
It's like, think about that one development in Dover.
I'm
They
not
have some that are
dying.
standalone.
Well, that's how we
nice.
looked at the Mill Plaza.
That also might be, what does note 1 say on that? It's not
Yeah, you
included
can't see
here,
the
but
note.
it is on the line. And when we go, and we should include what note 1 is, if we're doing, when we actually make this as an amendment.
Oh, okay, add that here, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, but what does
people
it
are going
say?
to ask
Oh,
the
the
question,
council's gonna
what is
wanna know.
note 1?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, I want to know right now.
But I think
Because it
the
might,
big picture.
note 1 might clarify everything Daryl just asked.
Oh, well, it does, actually.
There you go.
I think you need to
picture,
include note 1
All
here,
right.
Michael.
Could you read note 1?
It says, for mixed use with residential, see the definition, layout of uses within the building or lot may also be specified by zone, including flexibility allowed by conditional use in CB under development standards.
And we probably just instructed not just you, Daryl, but 3 other folks here who weren't around for the Mill Plaza job that would not have known that off the top of their heads.
Well, that wording of that was pretty confusing.
Well, that's true.
But the big,
Welcome to our
the big picture.
Welcome to zoning.
All right,
So
well,
does that-
maybe we can make that a little more
So does that
clear.
note 1 then
Yeah.
be changed to, away from CU?
Yeah, because it says CU. It can't be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
can't
we
be
need to clean up that note
Right.
because that note's going to be improper.
Okay.
There's no more
Thank you.
CU. We work so hard to keep central business too,
All
is
right.
CU. That was our
Whatever.
fix for Mill
All right.
Plaza. Oh, well.
Oh, well.
That's the way it
That's
goes.
which says maybe we need to go in and hit the table of dimensions for CB2 sooner rather than later. But, it looks like what's going to be done there is getting done, so I'm not.
Yeah, they're not planning
They're
on
not
doing
doing
anything
anything
anyway.
else there.
SB 284, authority for municipalities to regulate mandatory on-site parking requirements. So we're striking some stuff out.
Where are these people going to park?
Well, any builder that knows the demands of its customers
what we're
are going to
saying
put in
is,
more parking spots.
You know, you can only mandate a one space minimum.
I know.
And it depends on, like downtown, I don't know where they're going to park, but the town needs to redevelop 66 Main Street into a parking structure.
All right, so, and then we have a table that we have to fix a bunch of stuff in. Some of it seems to be simply vocabulary.
And that's it?
All right, so is everybody good with this coming as a single amendment?
Yeah.
I think it's the easiest way to bundle it.
Absolutely.
As long as we're explaining very clearly, these are coming down as state mandates because there are some Ps that are being created from X's
Yeah.
that some people will get very afraid of, but understand we don't have,
And some of these go into effect Saturday anyway,
Yeah.
even if we don't do anything.
we no longer have the power to make any decisions about these things.
All right, I'll bring this to you in October. Is that all right?
That's all right.
And the site reg, the last one about parking, that's
And
separate. You can adopt that on your own.
Bring this one before the EV stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oops, I just lost my.
Oh, well, then I'll put
My
I'll just
internet's
put.
going up and down, too.
Wait, I'll just put these up for public hearing on October 8th. Should I do that?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
As long as you get everything cleaned up that we said needed to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so conservation subdivision, this will be the last thing we do tonight, and, or do we want, well, it's 9:30. This might get a little
This is,
in the weeds.
yeah.
So, do we want to, Michael would like an opportunity
Let Mike speak.
to speak to us about his concerns regarding the work we're doing on the conservation subdivision and try to convince us to change our direction. I'm not sure we can give him the time and attention he deserves if we start right now.
Just 1 minute.
Why don't you let him have it?
Yeah, okay.
Let him have
If you say you can
it.
do it in 1 minute, go
then
ahead.
we have time.
Somebody's going to let him have it.
Yeah, no, Paul, and I appreciate your flexibility with this. I just want to say that. I sent out my email. I would just recommend that we back up, let me start from scratch, give you a whole new conservation subdivision. We've had good discussions. I gleaned a lot of knowledge from that. I'll incorporate that. I'll give you a whole new draft and go from there. Something Peyton suggested is, I could also do a primer on conservation subdivisions first with PowerPoint, if that would be useful.
I think that might be helpful just to have for the community as well.
I'm not going to get into the weeds, but that idea of a primer on the broad goals and perhaps some research into municipalities with similar characteristics and similar balances to strike between open space and the need for density. Some story problems could be quite instructive, and if you could identify successful ordinances that somewhere in the United States did these things that we're trying to do, that could be very educational for me.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that if that could be useful.
I totally, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, I think it also would prepare us because at some point, whatever we come up with as a deliverable that goes to public hearing, this is the kind of information up front, I think, that the public is wanting to have us show them of why we're driven to change anything anyway, besides the fact that the thing's a complete disaster at this point.
Yeah, and then I think we should think,
I'm in the weeds with it.
we should listen, and then instead of getting into the weeds, we should take a broad brush approach with the characteristics we're going to be looking for in such an ordinance and how we would measure your performance in drafting it according to the broader objectives that we outline.
Yeah.
in response to your,
That sounds good.
So, just one more comment on mine. So I really liked Paul's concept because it left a lot to allowing the developer to be creative, but by giving the public more land in return. And I think we need to stick with that concept because, one of the problems with the current conservation subdivision is the way we calculate everything is so prohibitive to actually building of anything that might be considered affordable and dense. So I think I just want to see that whatever the deliverable is part of the spirit of Paul's original scratch on this, which I thought was very creative, and I think it has a lot to offer because it is less complex. It allows creativity from the people that are the experts and gets us out of, strange calculations that made us have to round down on the housing development on a particular project that we had going instead of rounding up, and it was just horrible that we had to do those kinds of things when there was obviously more land to be able to build more homes. So I think we need to keep that in mind, is that we're getting more land and we're getting more houses, and that density allows for slightly more affordable instead of but I know that's not the
Different
type.
options,
So,
different types.
yeah, so I want to make sure that, to me, where we were starting on this one was the right way to go compared to what we were dealing with the conservation subdivision we have today. And we've been talking about the conservation subdivision since the housing task force over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we never got around to finishing that, so.
And the housing task force actually kind of the planning board can do that. Because it's complicated. We knew anything we did at the housing task force would have to be rebuilt.
Yeah, so I think we've had some good discussions. That's a good start.
There was some new data I caught in passing the last few days. The federal government came out with their new salary band for a middle-class family, and it starts at about 83,000 and goes up to 165, which, that's what I was for like my entire life, right? But when you compare that to what the median and average home sale prices are in town right now, those are 4 and 5 times those average salaries, which means that a middle-class family cannot afford to move to Durham. Only the rich, only an upper-class salary is able to move into town at this point, and that's not what the master plan wanted. So, I mean, I'm hoping this doesn't keep getting dragged out. How long do you think? So from the perspective of our workload, how long do you think you'll need to with everything else that we just threw on your plate tonight?
Well, I'm not, I think the EV and the zoning changes are first.
Right, in terms of what you need to work on.
Yeah, WS.
So are you thinking you'll have it in December? And the reason I'm asking is, or if you need more time, then maybe we pull up some other large project for us to work on while you work on that draft.
Maybe it might be better.
Or perhaps you have the procedures, if you could send the procedures to us separately in a quicker timeline, then we could work on that.
It might be worthwhile doing the WSOD next. So, because you've got that, and then I can just do this on the side while you're reviewing that.
All right, so what's our agenda look like next?
Riverwoods.
We got Riverwoods, we have a public hearing for Baghdad Road.
Baghdad Road, we have another 1 or 2 new minor, fairly lot line type things. And that's it.
I don't think I want to pick up. Let's hold it. Let's just keep it. Those 2. We have 2 new lot line adjustments coming in for our next meeting.
Yeah. Next meeting. Yeah.
That's 4 items. That's enough for that agenda.
That's enough.
All right. So we won't worry about putting anything zoning related on the agenda next meeting.
So we could do the public hearing for the zoning changes October 8th. those, the things we just discussed?
Yes.
I thought you'd already decided on.
We'd already we'd have 2 lot line adjustment public hearings,
Yeah.
plus a,
We'll have
hopefully.
probably may have Riverwoods.
Hopefully wrapping up Riverwoods. It could go on as a tentative, we may not have time to get to it. And if anything new shows up, then we definitely will be pushing it off.
All right, should I schedule public hearing for those zoning changes for the 8th? Should we advertise for that?
We're good with that, everybody? Yes, we are good for that public hearing. All right. We have one last thing on the agenda. Review of the August 13th minutes. You can click to the minutes now, yes. Does anybody have any adjustments to the minutes that hasn't been sent in to Karen?
But these aren't the minutes, these are in the agenda. That was
All right, we'll have to tell Tracy it didn't work.
it didn't work, it came to an agenda.
It came back to our agenda for tonight.
Yeah. It did not go to the minutes.
Okay.
That was disappointing.
Well, any
Oh, maybe,
changes that haven't already been set into Karen? No, all right, then, oh, I don't have them in front of me right now. Peter, were you at that meeting?
Yes, I think that was my first official meeting.
All right, I thought so. That means you are.
I've got a
allowed-
hard copy. if
You
anybody
are allowed
wants
to
it.
vote on it.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Then I'll move that we accept the minutes of August 13th.
I'll second, as long as I have the chance.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is 7. Okay.
Oh, I just have one quick thing. I forgot to put other business. It's a
Yes.
good thing.
Go ahead.
It's a good thing. On Saturday, October 4th, Paul and I are both going to be at a planning workshop for New Hampshire Municipal Association Law Conference. Paul's going to be on a panel discussion in the afternoon, and I'm doing a session in the morning on planning board roles and responsibilities. So I would like to ask all of you a favor. If you would give a little thought, what if you were to go to a session, planning board roles, and what kind of information would be helpful for you? Please just give some thought and send me an email or call me if you have any ideas that for what would be helpful for new
For-
people, old people on a board to
for
learn
what,
about.
like people that are like regular residents on coming to a planning
Oh,
board.
no, for a planning board member.
As a planning board member.
Right.
Just coming onto the board.
Just coming onto the
Well,
board.
either a new member or
even
or
been
a
around for a
veteran
while.
member. What would be useful for you to spend an hour learning, hearing
Conversation.
about? So anyway, that'd be just helpful for me. Please think about it and send me a
I got
note.
some ideas already.
And,
Yeah,
and,
that'd
if,
be great.
and if you happen to be curious, the panel I am on is sort of centers around how do citizen planners like us, who sometimes, and professional planners like Michael, how do you work well together? How do you make that come together and all? Apparently, that's not something that all the municipalities are able. Sometimes there's a lot of strife. So the conversation is going to be, how do you eliminate the strife?
Like us.
We never have that problem.
And also, I got one more thing. Stratford Regional is putting on, in conjunction with UNH's student planning department, in the afternoon of the 25th of this month, which is a Thursday, a session where there's, I think it's 4 communities coming together, 4 representatives, I should say, showing housing successes that they've done, things that they've done to help that they've managed to pass. Now, one of them you're going to be bored about because I'm going to be presenting on our overlay district that we did. But there'll be 3 other communities there too, Somersworth, and I forget who the others are off the top of my head. But it might be interesting to see what they've managed to do and accomplish and see if there's anything there that we can put on. So that's As I say, Stratford Regional's putting it up. It's very local. It's going to be in Barton Hall, which is, if you're not sure where that is, it is across the street from the greenhouses, towards the Gables. Not on the stadium side of the road, but on the other side of the road.
Our overlay is not boring.
So
what?
Our workforce, our attainable housing overlay district is not boring.
Not what?
Boring.
No, it's not boring.
It's extremely.
So, but that is going on. There should be, if you, like I said, there's.
What time is that again?
4 o'clock. And you can get more information about it off the SRPC's website. They should be able to. They just put out the open invitation for people to say they're coming.
I'll email that
There is a
around.
registration thing, but it's a free attendance. I'm pretty sure it's a free attendance, so. With regards to parking, I do not recommend a lot. You can park behind the Barton building, though that might be full. Do not, if you want, park next to the Barton building. That's a paid parking lot, so don't forget to feed the meter. UNH does check that lot regularly. But if you feel comfortable in A lot, you can use A lot. At that time of day, everybody's leaving, and I don't think anybody bothers checking whether or not. But that paid lot, that S lot that's right next to, or M lot that's right next to Barton, I know for experience that the meter maids check that one regularly.
You just called them a meter maid.
Meter maid.
Well,
They're all named Rita, too.
I don't know. It's UNH's folks. I mean, it's all right.
Okay.
That gets us to the end of that.
Since I'm Richard, I move we adjourn.
Yes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Even had the hand action too. I like that.